Chapter 1071, Selling Immortal Gu. Chapter 1071, Selling Immortal Gu. Translator. Atlas Studios. Editor. Atlas Studios. Boom boom boom. Lightning flashed and thunder rumbled, rocks were sent flying. Within the dust cloud, Xianxia opened his mouth, growling. His growl could not be heard by ears, but the three central continent Gu immortals attacking them shook, their souls were also shaking intensely. Oh no! This is a soul path immortal killer move. The three central continent Gu immortals quickly put up their defenses. Retreat. Using this prime opportunity, Xianxia called this out as he led Tai Bai Yunsheng and He Lu Lan to fly away. The central continent Gu immortals soon regained their senses, but Xianxia and the rest were nowhere to be seen. What soul path killer move is this? Amazing! At that moment, I felt that my soul was going to dissipate from the tremors alone. These three Gu immortals are from northern plains based on their aura. They are so secretive and mysterious. Who are they? They actually appeared in Earth Abyss, the territory of our ancient soul sect. Are they related to the giant cave-in that happened earlier? The three central continent Gu immortals had grim expressions as they communicated while healing their injuries. I have already sent this information to the sect, we are sending reinforcements now. Chase. They are all hit by my immortal killer move, I can sense them, they cannot escape. The three central continent Gu immortals stabilized their injuries and quickly chased after them. After chasing them for a while, the sensation vanished. The leading central continent Gu immortal was troubled. Strange. My immortal killer move was created several years ago, it can trace people, few know about it. How did they dispel it? There are many types of immortal Gu, through different combinations, killer moves are created. Gu immortals have many different methods, they are uncountable in number. Maybe the other party happened to have a way to counter your immortal killer move. This is possible but unlikely. In my opinion, it might not be dispelled, but only temporarily suppressed. Maybe they used a certain method to conceal themselves. The leader of the three immortals said, we chased them here, but the immortal killer move's connection vanished, there must be a reason. Did they enter someone else's immortal aperture? An immortal aperture was a small world independent of the 5 regions and 9 heavens. When fate escapees live in blessed lands and grotto heavens, they can avoid heaven overseeing towers detection. If Xianxia, who was hit, entered someone else's immortal aperture, the investigative method of the leader of the three immortals would not work. But entering someone else's immortal aperture was very rare in the Gu immortal world. Firstly, the immortal aperture was extremely important in a Gu immortal's cultivation, few would allow others inside. Secondly, there was a drawback to this. The immortal apertures of Gu immortals had their respective Dao marks. By entering another person's immortal aperture, their Dao marks would clash, they would interfere with, obstruct, or even reject and consume each other. The actual expenditure would depend on the situation itself. Normally speaking, a larger aperture storing a smaller one was more stable. Even if a smaller one was storing a bigger one, as long as their strengths were not far apart, the immortal aperture could contain Gu immortals. But they would suffer losses in one way or another. If the immortal aperture was placed outside and was connected to the heaven and earth chi, they would be a part of the 5 regions world. The immortal aperture would be far more stable, and could contain much more, or even higher cultivation level Gu immortals. If the person entering the immortal aperture had too high of a cultivation level and too many Dao marks, they might cause the immortal aperture to detonate. Like the fragment worlds of the immemorial 9 heavens, only people of a certain cultivation level could explore it. If they were too strong, they could not enter, forcefully going in would just destroy the small world. There was also a special situation, it was regarding apertures of immortal zombies. Everyone knew that an immortal zombie's immortal aperture was a dead land, the time inside was the same as the outside world, and the space inside was constantly crumbling, it could be seen as the Dao marks in the immortal aperture breaking apart, it was the process where they returned to the body. Thus, even if an immortal zombie's dead aperture enters a Gu immortal, there would not be any Dao mark resistance. The only problem would be that the dead land would crumble more quickly, and the Dao marks would return to the zombie body at a faster rate. The leader of the three immortals had anticipated this situation, thus, he made Ing Wuxia, Tai Bai Yunsheng, and He Lulan all afflicted by his immortal killer move. No matter who entered which immortal aperture, one person would be left, they would be detected. The leader of the three immortals suddenly had a thought, don't tell me, someone placed their immortal aperture while the other two entered the immortal aperture along with them. It is easy for a Gu immortal to regather their immortal aperture, but placing it down takes time, there would be a commotion. How can they do it so quickly without making a disturbance? But Gu immortals have countless methods, there are all sorts of geniuses in this world, they might have a certain method to quickly place down the immortal aperture. This central continent Gu immortal thought a lot, but could not discern anything relevant. But this did not affect his actions. My connection was severed here, rather than chasing them endlessly, I should stay here and investigate, maintaining the area and letting our wisdom path Gu immortals in the sect deduce. The central continent Gu immortal said. His suggestion was well received, the other two nodded without objecting. They are not leaving, it seems they are staying here. Inside the Super Gu formation, Tai Bai Yunsheng looked outside inside. These three rank 7 Gu immortals are from Ancient Soul Sect, sent here to investigate the huge cave-in. Master, it was fortunate that you could escape. Please heal your injuries. Shenu urged. He Lulan sank into silence. Ing Wuxia's expression was very ugly, he said in a hoarse voice, to think that 3 Gu immortals are waiting here for me. He had decided to make a sacrifice to protect his major interests, but to think that shortly after leaving, these 3 Ancient Soul Sect Gu immortals appeared and fought with them, Ing Wuxia and the rest were outmatched, they could only return to the Super Gu formation. With the concealment of the Super Gu formation, the immortal killer move that was used on He Lulan and the others became temporarily ineffective. The 3 rank 7 Gu immortals from Ancient Soul Sect were flying above the Super Gu formation, but because the Super Gu formation was extraordinary, it not only concealed them but also concealed all their aura, being in phantom form, it did not have any physical state, the 3 central continent Gu immortals could not detect anything. What do we do now? He Lulan thought to herself, looking at Ing Wuxia with an inquisitive gaze. Ing Wuxia turned his face around, his gaze flickered uncertainly, after thinking about it, he made up his mind, he gritted his teeth, in this desperate situation, I can only do this. A moment later, in Treasure Yellow Heaven. One pillar of treasure light shot into the sky, it was thick and large, attracting countless gazes the moment it appeared. What kind of treasure can lead to such amazing treasure light? Immortal Gu, it's an immortal Gu. Someone is using Treasure Yellow Heaven to transport immortal Gu again. So extravagant. Countless wills and Gu immortals who happened to be around were talking about it. This familiar scene made them think of earlier, when Langya Land's spirit used Treasure Yellow Heaven to send Fang Yuan his sword path immortal Gu. But soon, the commotion exploded among the people. The Gu immortals will publicly announced, this immortal Gu was to be sold openly, anyone could buy it, but they had to use immortal Gu to exchange for it, or collect enough immortal materials provided in the list to trade. All of the Gu immortals were shaken. Exchanging immortal Gu for immortal Gu was normal, it was also nearly the only way of transacting immortal Gu. But to think that this transaction could also be done using immortal materials. This was shocking and surprising. At once, the whole of Treasure Yellow Heaven went into chaos. Central Continent, Eastern Sea, Western Desert, Northern Plains, Southern Border, Gu immortals from all 5 regions revealed deep interest towards this immortal Gu. Especially when they realized that the immortal materials on the list were not absurd. As long as they collected the immortal materials and exchanged for this immortal Gu, they would profit without fail. As time passed, a sudden immortal Gu transaction caused a huge commotion in Treasure Yellow Heaven. More and more Gu immortals heard about this and placed their attention here, asking for the price. The price was very fair, countless Gu immortals were moved. Ing Wuxia smiled coldly as he saw this. The seller of the Immortal Gu was none other than him. Immortal Gu were usually not sold, because refining Gu was hard, and Immortal Gu were unique. Even 100 portions of immortal materials might not successfully refine the Gu. But Xianxia was forced to his wit's end. He had no choice but to choose to sell Immortal Gu. He had immortal killer moves and Immortal Gu recipes in his mind. They were all given to him by spectral souls while within the Red Lotus in the River of Time. Because the will carried in spring-autumn Cicada was limited, this information was chosen carefully and given to Xianxia. All of it was precious and had great value. He could not sell these, they were all useful in saving his main body. If they were sold, his secrets would be exposed, they could not be sold. He could not sell these things, and his cultivation resources had been exchanged for immortal materials, which were used up when refining fixed immortal travel. Then, Xianxia had only one choice left, that was to sell Immortal Gu. He had quite a number of Immortal Gu. They were mostly from Feng Yuan. He was selling one of Feng Yuan's Immortal Gu, Iron Crown Eagle Strength Gu. In the current Gu Immortal world, even though Strength Path Gu Immortals were rare, this Immortal Gu still drew a lot of attention. Because its price was not high, many rank 6 Gu Immortals without Immortal Gu could bear the cost. As I expected. By selling this Iron Crown Eagle Strength Gu first to cause a commotion, I can raise the prices later when I sell other Immortal Gu. Xianxia snickered internally. Central Continent, Heavenly Court. Fairy Ziwei, do you know about the situation in Treasure Yellow Heaven? Granny Sha used Gu worms to transmit and ask Fairy Ziwei. Fairy Ziwei had been trying to deduce the location of Feng Yuan. But she did not know that Feng Yuan's soul and body were separated. Most of her deductions were focused on Xianxia, who was closest to her. Feng Yuan was inside Langyip Blessed Land, and they were separated by 2 regional walls. Her capability in deducing him was minimal. After getting Granny Sha's reminder, Fairy Ziwei smiled, stopping her deduction, selling Iron Crown Eagle Strength Immortal Gu in Treasure Yellow Heaven. And he wants to use Space Path Immortal Gu like fixed immortal travel in exchange. It seems that Feng Yuan has been pushed into a corner, he has no choice but to do this. It is a pity, if it were anyone else, Treasure Yellow Heaven cannot be disrupted. But Heavenly Court is an exception. Open the treasury, I am going to make a transaction with Treasure Yellow Heaven's Heavenly Spirit. Treasure Yellow Heaven's Heavenly Spirit was extremely proud and rarely showed itself. It ignored even Heavenly Court and had once resigned itself to death rather than giving in to a venerable's threat, making them helpless. The huge Heavenly Court could not force Treasure Yellow Heaven to stop Xianxia from making transactions, that was impossible. But Fairy Ziwei was very confident in this. If you find any errors, broken links, non-standard content, etc., please let us know. Report chapter so we can fix it as soon as possible. Chapter 1072, New Shang Clan Leader. Chapter 1072, New Shang Clan Leader. Translator. Atlas Studios. Editor. Atlas Studios. Southern Border. Xianxia Mountain. The sun was high in the sky, shining brilliantly. There were lots of people on Xianxia Mountain, the atmosphere was lively. Rank 4 Peak Stage Gu Master Xiangbuli stood at the mountain peak, attracting almost everyone's attention. Even though Xiangbuli was an experienced veteran, at this moment, he was feeling anxious. Because right now was Shang Clan's ceremony, it had huge significance. All sorts of people were attending, Tai Clan, Yi Clan, Wu Clan, Ho Clan, and all the other representatives of Southern Border's super forces, even experts from the demonic path and lone cultivators were here. The elites of Southern Border were all gathered for this, it was a grand event. Shang Clan was different from the other super forces, that was because of Shang Clan's battle stage policy. The other super forces' battle stages were meant for their clansmen, while Shang Clan's battle stage could also take in demonic cultivators and lone cultivators. Shang Clan's foundation was in trading, its main base was Xianxia Mountain. Deals could be made with anyone, it was the biggest connector of the righteous path, demonic path, and lone cultivators. This was not just among the Gu Masters, the same applied to the Gu Immortal world. Shang Clan's Gu Immortals were usually the middlemen of righteous path and demonic path transactions. Seeing that Shangbu appeared, the countless Gu masters on Xiangliang Mountain realized that this ceremony of Shang clan was about to begin. The entirety of Xiangliang Mountain became quiet. Shangbu felt his pressure intensifying. He took in a deep breath. He forced himself to calm down as he declared loudly, "Shang clan leader succession ceremony, begin." At the next moment, grand music was played, countless birds and peacocks flew around, golden flowers were raining down from the sky. It was a glorious scene. From the interior of Xiangliang Mountain, a long clear rainbow road extended outwards. A splendidly dressed girl walked on the clear rainbow road, appearing in front of everyone. She had silky jet black hair draping over her shoulders. Her eyebrows were thin like smoke, her eyes as clear as the moon. Her skin was snow white, and her hair was tied up. Wearing a beautiful dress, she walked slowly. It was Xianxia. At once, countless Gu masters held their breaths. So beautiful. This is Shang clan's next clan leader. This woman is so beautiful, she is truly like a fairy. Who is she? Everyone was discussing and clamoring. But these noises were all drowned by the elegant music that was being played. The esteemed guests on the mountain peak from all the super forces, as well as experts from the demonic path and lone cultivators, were all looking at Xianxia as she walked in, transmitting their thoughts to each other. This woman is Shang Yan Fei's illegitimate daughter. She does not have high reputation, her aptitude is low, and her cultivation level is also low. But in the end, she actually became Shang clan's new clan leader. Fate truly toys with people, incredible, incredible. During the Battle of Tian Mountain, countless heroes and conquerors died. The forces in southern border were all heavily affected, much of the power balance shifted. And Tian Mountain has also become among southern border's greatest mysteries after that battle. Xianxia slowly walked on the clear rainbow road. Under everyone's watchful gazes, her clothes fluttered in the air. She ascended slowly, walking towards the sky from Xiangliang Mountain's peak. Clouds gathered in the sky, light was shining brightly, gathering into a throne. Everyone raised their heads to watch. Xianxia had an unmatched and elegant disposition right now. Today, in Southern Border's Gu Master World, you are the sole main character. Shang Qing muttered. As a senior female immortal of Shang clan, she was the one who single-handedly supported Xianxia to become the leader of Shang clan. Xianxia became Shang clan leader. In order to prevent any chaos, Shang Qing had concealed herself and watched in the background to control the situation. After the Battle of Tian Mountain, Southern Border has fallen into its biggest commotion in several hundred years. Can this girl really lead Shang clan and maintain stability, or even expand? Shang Tanmo asked. He had the appearance of a youth, he wore a blue robe and was skinny. He was looking at Xianxia with a deep gaze of doubt and inquisitiveness. Shang Qing smiled. All of the generations of clan leaders were nurtured through gaining experience. The reason why I chose Xianxia is not because of her ability, but her heart and magnanimity. Her characteristics are an advantage that gives her an unspeakable charisma. It is extremely rare in the current world. Look at the mountain peak, her subordinates are all tearing up from joy, they are so loyal and trusting towards Xianxia. But actually, these people that she took in had varied backgrounds, they were a chaotic bunch, but now they are all on the same side. Oh. Shang Tanmo heard this and was moved. He knew that Shang Qing chose this girl to be the clan leader not just because of her personality, but because she had also made some observations and considerations over time. He followed Shang Qing's indication and looked down. To think that my lady would become Shang clan leader one day. Sob sob sob. Missy, we finally did it. Xiao Dai was weeping in happiness. She was Xianxi's trusted servant. When they were in Zhang clan, they were inseparable. She followed her in the caravan, to Shang clan city. They had gone through thick and thin, her loyalty was unmatched. Master, if you learn about this inside the door of life and death, you must be very happy. Young Miss is completely different from your other children, she can definitely give a new future to Shang clan. The servant Xiao Lan had teary eyes. She was an orphan, adopted by Shang Yan Fei when she was young. She was capable and was given to Xianxia by Shang Yan Fei. Now that Shang Yanfei died on Etian Mountain, her loyalty towards Shang Yanfei was all transferred to Xianxia. Zhou Quan was silent. He was Zhou clan's leader, he had an arrogant attitude and thought highly of himself. After Zhou clan was destroyed, he was a vagrant, surviving by opening a shop in Shang clan inner city. Afterwards, Fang Yuan forced him to go under Shang Xianci as a subordinate. Seeing that Shang Xianci was sitting down on the cloud throne, Zhou Quan's gaze was in a daze. At this moment, he thought of Fang Yuan, a complex smile appeared on his face. Black and white demons, should I be thanking you? Now that the young miss is Shang clan leader, my Zhou clan has hope to rise up again. But soon, Zhou Quan thought again, no, reviving the clan will have to wait. Even though the young miss is a clan leader, the internal threats are huge, her situation is not stable. How can I leave her now when she needs the help of her subordinates the most? Zhou Quan was not overwhelmed by this huge ceremony. He looked around at Shang Buli and Wan Qianshan. When Shang Yanfei was Shang clan leader, he had 5 capable subordinates, they were called the 5 great generals of Shang clan. After the battle of Etian Mountain, among the 5 great generals of Shang clan, only 2 were left, they were Shang Buli and Wan Qianshan. The former controlled Shang clan's slave trade, while the latter was in charge of resource gathering, like mining, herb gathering, hunting, and others. The one with Shang's surname was the representative of Shang clan. The other with Wan's surname was an external elder, he represented the benefits of Shang clan's external Gu masters. With these 2 experts, young Miss' internal situation in Shang clan is truly bad, she is weak while they are strong. There is even a possibility that they could make her a puppet leader by taking over secretly. Young Miss' status makes her unable to obtain the support of every clansman, she is an illegitimate daughter after all. The internal problems are alarming, but the external problems are worse, danger is lurking everywhere. In the Battle of Etian Mountain, too many leaders and experts died, everything is changing, resources without owners are being contested for again. Young Miss has too few resources available, be it human resources or actual goods, compared to her siblings. And she also has to deal with affairs outside the clan. And at this critical moment, Lady Wei is leaving her too. Thinking of this, Zhou Quan looked at the female Gu master beside him, Wei De Xian, feeling very unhappy. He was the chief steward of Shang Xianci, he knew a lot of information. Wei De Xian was the wife of Wei clan leader, she was skilled at training guards, and was pregnant, her motive was to protect her husband's only bloodline. Because Fang Yuan targeted her weakness, threatening her, she eventually went over to Shang Xianci's side, and helped her nurture a band of elite guards. At the same time, she became the leader of Shang Xianci's guards. But now, she had already given birth, she had successfully carried on her husband's bloodline. Because she was always out in the open, her brother Wei Shenjing found out. He sent a letter and urged Wei De Xian to go and serve Wu clan with him. Wei De Xian was moved, after all, she was not loyal to Shang Xianci, she was threatened by Fang Yuan and had no choice back then. But Zhou Quan did not know that, while he was worrying about the situation, Wei De Xian was also very worried. Zhou Quan was once the leader of a clan, he had a good perspective of the big picture. Wei De Xian was the same, she was a clan leader's wife, she could see further than Xiao Lan and Xiao Dai. Shang Yanfei is already dead, my enmity with Shang clan has faded. Even though I was forced by the black demon back then, and had to serve the young miss, after this long period of time, I have come to understand her. Young miss is a good person. There are too few good people in this world. Little brother, I will have to disappoint you, I cannot go to help you. You are a hidden elder in Wu clan, even though you are ostracized, your life is safe. But here with young miss, danger lurks everywhere. Wei De Xian sighed internally. But no matter what, as the young miss steward, I need to think for her sake. Right now, she needs manpower, the 3 demonic path brothers, Xiong Tu, Xiong Hua, and Xiong Feng, must stay, we cannot let them leave. Zhou Quan looked at 3 people as brilliance flashed in his eyes. No matter what, as the young miss personal guard, I need to think in her interests. Shang Yanfei is dead, Shang clan only has 2 generals left, we need to prevent them from making her a figurehead, we need to draw in new blood. Xiao Yan is a great choice. Not only does he have outstanding battle strength, he idolizes Wei Yang. Because of the black and white demons, Wei Yang had a good relationship with young Miss, and Xiao Yan was also close to them. Wei Xian looked at Xiao Yan, who was among the crowd as she planned. In the sky, Xianxia began to speak publicly for the first time. Her speech was succinct, but there was deep meaning in it. People were pondering over it. This was not prepared by her, of course. Wei Xian and Zhou Quan had written her script. After the speech ended, a huge wave of applause and cheers erupted. Xianxia slowly left the center of attention. But the succession ceremony was not over yet. What followed would be a day and night of celebration, wine and food with songs playing, to sweep away the sadness and dejection from all the heroes' deaths. After vanishing from the sky, Xianxia directly appeared in the inner city's mansion. So tired. With no one watching her, she relaxed as she felt deep fatigue in her mind. But she knew that now was not the time to rest. She used her gu worms to summon her aides. Xiao Lan, Xiao Dai, Wei Xian, Zhou Quan, Xiong Tu, Xiong Hua, and Xiong Feng. Xianxia had arrangements to make. Yi Fan walked on the road, his eyes were shining brilliantly, he walked with an imposing aura. Ever since he defended Xianxia while refusing to retreat in danger, he obtained the female immortal Shang Qing's approval, he was given a superb inheritance and many gu worms. Yi Fan was troubled because he had no cultivation guidance. After getting this inheritance, his horizons expanded, he no longer lacked gu worms, his future was bright. He was considered Xianxia's life benefactor, he could enter her mansion without anyone stopping him. To think that Lady Xianxia became Shang clan leader, but it will not be easy as a clan leader, not to mention the leader of Shang clan. How can I, Yi Fan, abandon her? Thinking of Xianxia, Yi Fan's heart beat quickly. He was developing feelings for Xianxia, but he did not know what she felt about him. He knew that Xianxia was inside her mansion, he came without an invitation. Close, he was close. The final door was right in front of him. He could see Lady Xianxia again. Yi Fan's footsteps became faster. He stood at the door, he straightened his back as he patted his clothes, he was about to knock. He heard Xianxia's voice from inside, everyone listen to me, after becoming clan leader, there is one thing I want to do first. This has been weighing in my heart for a long time. I want to use Shang clan's power to remove Black Demon, Brother Fong Zheng's, arrest warrant. Of course, that includes Sister White Demon as well. Yi Fan was dazed, his finger that was going to knock on the door froze in the air. Xianxia was talking to her subordinates, while Shang Qing and the other Gu immortals were discussing southern borders matters in Living Treasure Blessed Land. Living Treasure Blessed Land was Shang clan's public blessed land, their base camp. It was situated in the main world of southern border, it was very stable and could allow Gu immortals to go in. The door of this blessed land was the Living Treasure door, its favorite activity was digging its nose. The Battle of Tian Mountain has ended, southern borders Gu immortal world will be in turmoil and unrest for the next few decades. Shang clan's first supreme elder spoke. He looked around, continuing, right now, our clan has 3 matters. First, Zombie Alliance have vanished mysteriously over the 5 regions, the same goes for Southern Borders Zombie Alliance branch. They occupied many resources, Shang clan can take them over. Second, Tian Mountain has been covered by the giant Dream Realm. Us Righteous Path forces are joining up and blockading this place, doing research while preventing Demonic Path or Lone Immortals in. Third, Tian Mountain's shocking gambling contest ended without result, but there are huge amounts of cultivation resources left inside Treasure Yellow Heaven. The sole participant of this gambling contest who is still alive, Gu Immortal Gua Lao, is the only person to inherit the resources. We have to take control of him. Shang clan's Gu Immortals all nodded. The 3 matters mentioned by First Supreme Elder were the biggest matters in Southern Borders Gu Immortal world now, countless people were concerned. I have been paying attention to Treasure Yellow Heaven, to speak the truth. Shang Qing was about to speak, when suddenly her expression changed, she said in shock, "What happened?" Treasure Yellow Heaven closed. If you find any errors, broken links, non-standard content, etc., please let us know. Report chapter so we can fix it as soon as possible. Chapter 1073, Wisdom is hard to use. Chapter 1073, Wisdom is hard to use. Translator: Atlas Studios. Editor: Atlas Studios. Treasure Yellow Heaven came from Daoist countless treasures. In the medieval antiquity era, a rank 8 Gu immortal, known as Daoist countless treasures, acquired a fragment of Yellow Heaven by chance. He fused the fragment into his grotto heaven, and formed Treasure Yellow Heaven. After a Gu immortal's immortal aperture absorbs a fragment of the immemorial 9 heavens, it would be placed in the outside world of the 5 regions, and could not be moved anymore. Treasure Yellow Heaven was the same, ever since it was placed in its location 300,000 years ago, it had not moved. But where was Treasure Yellow Heaven's exact location? This was a huge mystery, people did not know. Wisdom Path Gu immortals had tried to deduce it over the years without finding the answer. Treasure Yellow Heaven's original owner was Daoist countless treasures. After him, there were no successors. Even the many immortal venerables and demon venerables could not find the exact location of Treasure Yellow Heaven. Treasure Yellow Heaven has existed until today, it is the #1 open market in the 5 regions Gu immortal world. Why did it close suddenly? Xianxia's Gu immortals were shocked and suspicious. Ever since Daoist countless treasures created Treasure Yellow Heaven, it had been open for 300,000 years, it had unknowingly become the biggest help towards Gu immortals' cultivation, it had an important place in the mind of every Gu immortal. For the longest time, Gu immortals had gotten used to the existence of Treasure Yellow Heaven. Now that it was closed, everyone was caught off guard. Why do you think that Treasure Yellow Heaven closed suddenly? Oh no, we are after the resources gambled in Etion Mountain, now that it is closed, that huge bet is stuck in Treasure Yellow Heaven. Don't tell me, Treasure Yellow Heaven's heavenly spirit is trying to steal this huge amount. Xianxia's first supreme elder shook his head, he denied that idea. Treasure Yellow Heaven's heavenly spirit does not care about that bet, if it was corrupt, Treasure Yellow Heaven would not have its reputation and status. There had never been a case of corruption in Treasure Yellow Heaven in history. But regarding the closing of Treasure Yellow Heaven, there have been a few instances. Is that so? We would like to know. Xianxia quickly asked. Xianxia's first supreme elder spoke slowly, revealing a secret. As it turned out, there were some instances recorded of Treasure Yellow Heaven closing in history, they were due to the same reason. It involved fragments of immemorial Yellow Heaven. The immemorial 9 heavens were red, orange, yellow, green, azure, blue, purple, white and black. Right now, only white heaven and black heaven remained. Yellow Heaven had shattered long ago. Back then, Daoist countless treasures knew that he could not survive a coming tribulation, he used his own immortal aperture to absorb a small fragment world of immemorial Yellow Heaven, forming Treasure Yellow Heaven. Even though he was trapped inside Treasure Yellow Heaven and lost his freedom, he no longer faced any tribulations. After Treasure Yellow Heaven absorbed the immemorial Yellow Heaven fragment, it could only continue to expand by absorbing other Yellow Heaven fragments. There were several transactions recorded in history. Certain people had sold a fragment world of immemorial Yellow Heaven to Treasure Yellow Heaven's heavenly spirit. After the heavenly spirit obtained it, it closed Treasure Yellow Heaven and focused on absorbing the Yellow Heaven fragment to expand itself. This time, if there are no unexpected surprises, should also be this case. Xianxia's first supreme elder finally surmised. He was right. In this world, it might be that the only thing that could move Treasure Yellow Heaven's heavenly spirit were Yellow Heaven fragments. The immemorial 9 heavens had shattered long ago, Yellow Heaven fragments were nearly non-existent at this point. Only those with immense luck and opportunities could obtain them. But Heavenly Court had a long history, its treasury was beyond imagination. It could take out a fragment of immemorial Yellow Heaven, and the size was quite large too. If the amount was little, Treasure Yellow Heaven's heavenly spirit would not need to close Treasure Yellow Heaven, it could absorb the fragment easily. Now, Treasure Yellow Heaven closed, the Yellow Heaven fragment had to be so huge that the heavenly spirit had no choice but to focus entirely on the absorption. Treasure Yellow Heaven had been impartial all along, it did not side with anyone, it was mysterious and Heavenly Court could do nothing to it. If Heavenly Court asked the Heavenly Spirit to rejecting Wu Xie's transactions openly, the Heavenly Spirit would not respond to them, and Gu immortals from the other 4 regions would not care either. With the 5 regional walls, Heavenly Court's influence and control was mostly limited to Central Continent. But Heavenly Court was extremely affluent, it tossed out one large Yellow Heaven fragment. This way, Wu Xie's plan to save himself was thwarted. Damn it! Heavenly Court actually did this. Wu Xie's face was ruthless, he clenched his fists, veins were popping, he was gritting his teeth until a grinding sound could be heard. He was furious, but with the heavy-handed method used by Heavenly Court, he could not do anything but watch helplessly. Guh. Suddenly, Wu Xie felt a rush of blood as he spat it out, falling backwards. Hatred and anger filled his heart, other than that, he also felt bone-chilling coldness. Heavenly Court directly sold the Yellow Heaven fragment cheaply, they were paying such a huge price to eliminate Wu Xie, this showed their firm determination in this aspect. It was a desperate situation. Heavenly Court's move had blocked Wu Xie's final way out. They were too ruthless. Without Treasure Yellow Heaven, even if Wu Xie wanted to sell Immortal Gu, they were stuck with him. And even more disgustingly, his Immortal Gu Iron Crown Eagle strength was still stuck inside. Without the immortal materials from transactions, how can he continue to refine Gu? One couldn't cook a meal without the ingredients, without Immortal Gu, how could he get out of this situation? Treasure Yellow Heaven closed, the Heavenly Spirit was absorbing the Yellow Heaven fragment, this was not going to end quickly. In history, the shortest period was just over 2 months. There was no way out. He could only allow Heavenly Court to deduce while he and the rest defended and stalled for time, until finally, strong foes came to find them personally, and they failed to resist them. Langya Blessed Land. Fang Yuan's appearance had changed, he became an immortal zombie again. He had once modified Nirvana Fire and created a Strength Path Immortal Killer move to alternate between life and death. He could be a living Gu immortal, or a dead immortal zombie. But now, he was not using this method. His Strength Path Immortal Gu were all lost, he could not use that Strength Path Killer move. Fang Yuan's plan was simple, his soul flew out and left his body, entering the corpse of a Strength Path Immortal zombie. The corpses of these Strength Path Immortal zombies came from Blazing Heaven Demonis. After rebirth, Fang Yuan had still asked for these to make preparation for the Life and Death Immortal Aperture as a failsafe, he had obtained many Strength Path Immortal zombies from Blazing Heaven Demonis. These bodies were all placed in Star Form Blessed Land. After Tian Mountain, he had gotten them back from Langya Land Spirit. Other than these immortal zombie bodies, there were also large amounts of precious immortal materials. Most of the quasi-rank 9 immortal materials were obtained from the Gu Formation in Earth Trench. Some of the rank 7-8 immortal materials were picked up from Falling Heavenly River. He had benefited greatly from Bo Qing's awakening, when his sword lights traversed Central Continent. Fang Yuan did not have much immortal essence or immortal essence stones, but he did not lack Gu refinement materials. But the value of these immortal materials were too high, it was inappropriate to use them now. Immortal materials were not the key point, Wisdom Gu was more important. Fang Yuan was staring at Wisdom Gu for a long time, but it did not move at all, let alone emit the light of wisdom. Using other immortal zombie bodies in place of myself did not work. I cannot draw out the light of wisdom. Fang Yuan was not surprised at this. He had already made similar experiments long ago in Hu Immortal Blessed Land. Wisdom Gu had never been refined by Fang Yuan, he had only made an agreement with it back then because of the winds of assimilation. Survival was the instinct of all living beings. But Wisdom Gu seemed to only respond to Fang Yuan as a whole. His body and soul were both needed to draw out the light of wisdom. If one was missing, if he only had his soul and not his body, it would not work. That means, the most direct way is to just take back my original body. Fang Yuan thought. His original body was still an immortal zombie. There was no need to change anything, it was suitable to bathe in the light of wisdom. But this method, although it would work, was impractical. Xianxia has already vanished, he could possibly have spring-autumn cicada, fixed immortal travel, and other immortal goo. Other than that, He Lulan and Tai Bai Yunxing might be helping him. Earlier, Fang Yuan had no time because of the calamity. Now, every time he thought about the problem called Xianxia, he felt a deep headache. Thus, I all the more need to refine Fang Zheng into a blood deity. Fang Yuan's current body was created from sovereign immortal fetus Gu, he had no parents, he had no bloodline relationship to anything in this world. But Fang Yuan still wanted to refine Fang Zheng into a blood deity. The blood deity refined using Fang Zheng could counter Fang Yuan's body. Even if the immortal zombie body could not be taken back later, Fang Yuan could use the base of Fang Zheng's blood deity to modify it. Or possibly, he could combine it with his soul to regain Wisdom Gu's acknowledgement. Of course, this was purely Fang Yuan's intuition. But intuition was not to be underestimated, especially when Fang Yuan's blood path attainment level was at Grandmaster level. When Fang Yuan was testing Wisdom Gu, Xianxia Lan's spirit was also observing. Seeing the results, he sighed and felt much regret. Fang Yuan looked towards Xianxia Lan's spirit in concerned fashion. Does First Supreme Elder have any methods to use Wisdom Gu? Xianxia Lan's spirit stared at Fang Yuan, replying petulantly, the simplest method is to raise your cultivation level to rank 9 and directly refine this Wisdom Gu. Fang Yuan smiled bitterly, I know this method too, I am asking if there are other methods. Sigh, there is a method that isn't a method. I can feed it with lifespan Gu continuously, after feeding it for some time, I might obtain Wisdom Gu's acknowledgement. If this method works, Wisdom Gu would be mine, by then, you would have to give it to me no matter what. Xianxia Lan's spirit thought about it and smiled to himself. Fang Yuan's eyes drooped, is it really fine to directly say it? You think I want to? Xianxia Lan's spirit was stomping his feet, Land spirits cannot lie, damn it, why did I tell you about my motives again? You accursed fellow. If you find any errors, broken links, non-standard content, etc., please let us know, report chapter so we can fix it as soon as possible. Chapter 1074, Spy Exposed. Chapter 1074, Spy Exposed. Translator. Atlas Studios. Editor. Atlas Studios. Fang Yuan shook his head, sighing. The price of feeding Wisdom Gu was too high. Only Xianxia Lan's spirit was willing to pay it. Fang Yuan used sovereign immortal fetus Gu to revive, his age was about 16 now. Humans in this world lived 100 years on average, that meant that Fang Yuan had about 84 years of lifespan left, it was a long time. But even so, Fang Yuan knew that if he obtained lifespan Gu, he would use them all on himself. Even if he did not use them, he would save them for the future in case of emergencies. Lifespan Gu were mortal Gu. But lifespan Gu were among the strongest forms of currency in Gu immortal transactions, almost nothing could compare. There were two obstacles in a Gu immortal's cultivation, one was calamities and tribulations, the other was lifespan. Even if one was as strong as an immortal venerable or demon venerable, they would still be challenged by these two problems. In fact, back then when Giant Sun Immortal Venerable set up 88 True Yang building, one of his most important goals was to ransack the lifespan Gu in the whole of Northern Plains to extend his lifespan, as for feeding Wisdom Gu, it was secondary. During Giant Sun Immortal Venerable's later years, for a long period of time, Wisdom Gu was in constant hunger, it had to go into deep sleep and could not be used. Later, when Spectral Soul Demon Venerable explored 88 True Yang building, he also found Wisdom Gu. But he could not use it, or afford to feed it, lifespan Gu were hard to find, he did not have enough for himself. However, with his soul path attainment level, he could make use of aspects of other paths using his own as a foundation. He did not have much need for Wisdom Gu anyway. After Spectral Soul Demon Venerable died, his era ended. Thereafter, the world started to produce Lifespan Gu again. And after that, another huge figure appeared in the world, that was Paradise Earth Immortal Venerable. He had already searched for Lifespan Gu during his later years, but Lifespan Gu's demand far exceeded the supply. It became rarer until it vanished. After Paradise Earth died, a new cycle started as the world recuperated. Lifespan Gu appeared again. Every 10 years, 88 Truyang Building conducted the Imperial Court contest, ransacking Northern Plains. Lifespan Gu, Wisdom Gu was slowly fed and recuperated, until Fang Yuan destroyed Imperial Court Blessed Land. And later, due to its survival instincts, Wisdom Gu left with Fang Yuan and went to Hu Immortal Blessed Land. After a long series of events, it ended up in Langya Blessed Land now. During Three Kings Blessed Land, I used 2 Lifespan Gu to refine Second Aperture Gu. But that could not be helped. In this life, I had obtained a Lifespan Gu from Blazing Heaven Demoness. But after rebirth, I lost this opportunity and have no Lifespan Gu with me now. Since Blazing Heaven Demoness could give me a Lifespan Gu, she definitely had more than one in her possession. But she died in the 10 Extreme Formation. Her Lifespan Gu were also destroyed. No. Fang Yuan thought as he recalled something. Lifespan Gu is hard to find, even an Immortal Venerable or Demon Venerable would need and desire it. Blazing Heaven Demoness was plotted against by Spectral Soul and died. Her accumulated wealth must have been taken by Spectral Soul already. Even though Spectral Soul's plan failed, the remnant forces of Shadow Sect and Zombie Alliance remain. Their wealth is still immense. As for Langya Land Spirit, he also had a number of Lifespan Gu. It was quite the sum. These Lifespan Gu were all produced inside Langya Blessed Land. Langya Blessed Land had a long history of over 300,000 years. It had lived through the era of 2 Venerables. Langya Blessed Land was originally Langya Grotto Heaven. It had an incredibly huge space. After intentionally being dropped to a Blessed Land, because Refinement Cauldron was fused into the Immortal Aperture World, Langya Blessed Land space increased instead. It was larger than even many Grotto Heavens. There were an immense number of hairy men living here. They were split into 3 countries. The life forms in here procreated and had generations after generations of offspring. Lifespan Gu was produced from life forms. Wherever life forms lived, Lifespan Gu could be naturally produced. With a huge space, countless inhabitants, and a long history, together with Langya Land Spirit's absolute control over the Blessed Land, whenever a Lifespan Gu appeared, he could collect it immediately. With all these reasons, Langya Land Spirit's Lifespan Gu accumulation increased continuously. Fang Yuan did not know the exact number, but he could easily guess that the number was not small. Ordinary Gu Immortals would need Lifespan Gu, but Langya Land Spirit did not. Activating Wisdom Gu requires the Gu Immortal's lifespan to be expended. And feeding Wisdom Gu also requires Lifespan Gu. For now, I should let Langya Land Spirit feed it. Fang Yuan knew about Langya Land Spirit's motives even without any probing. This could not be helped. Fang Yuan had no Lifespan Gu, he could not feed it. He was in deep trouble himself. When Gu Immortals went through tribulations, they become stronger and stronger each time. Fang Yuan was worried about the next earthly calamity. He had no time to care about Wisdom Gu. Ever since Wisdom Gu was brought away by him, Fang Yuan had not fed it once. The truth was, Langya Land Spirit was helping Fang Yuan. In any case, even if Wisdom Gu acknowledges Langya Land Spirit, it is a good thing. With my current status, I can use Langya Land Spirit's methods to use Wisdom Gu. I will only need to pay some sect contribution points. All Gu worms were tools. All of his hard work was targeted towards that illusory goal. For this goal, Fang Yuan had given up too much. There was nothing he could not discard. The experiment with Wisdom Gu ended in failure. But Fang Yuan felt no disappointment. Before leaving, he asked for one thing from Langya Land Spirit. An information path Mortal Gu that recorded the scene of when he refined change form Immortal Gu. This Gu refinement was very strange, the tribulations became so strong. We were lucky that we succeeded. Fang Yuan, if you find out anything, you have to tell me. Langya Land Spirit instructed Fang Yuan before he left. First Supreme Elder did not manage to find out anything, neither could I. I will do my best. Fang Yuan answered. He had a vague guess that the tribulations gained strength due to the sovereign immortal fetus Gu. But he would not tell Langya Land Spirit this guess no matter what. Other than researching the tribulations, Fang Yuan had another goal. He wanted to investigate Langya's sect, and see if there were any traitors left. All along, Fang Yuan had been mindful of this. Shadow sect had sent 2 traitors into Langya Blessed Land, unexpectedly having hairy man Gu immortals. When Shadow sect attacked Langya Blessed Land, these 2 spies played an important role. But other than them, are there other spies in Langya sect? This problem was extremely important to Fang Yuan. After all, he had already joined Langya sect. For a long time in the future, he would need to depend on Langya Land Spirit to undergo tribulations and cultivate. He had just started this investigation, he did not have the time or energy until now. After flying for some time, Fang Yuan was already close to his new accommodations. This was a grand city. Pure white city walls stood up proudly. At the peak of tall towers, flags were hanging. This was a cloud city. On Cloud Cover Continent, there were 12 cloud cities, each of the cities was a mortal Gu house. When activated together, they could form the 12-wave cloud confusion formation, it could cover the entirety of Cloud Cover Continent. These 12 cloud cities were created from the former 12 cloud buildings. The current Langya Land Spirit liked grand appearances, he was different from the previous one. The cloud city in Fang Yuan's vision was given by Langya Land Spirit, to be the place where he defended and lived. The other hairy man Gu immortals, including Langya Land Spirit himself, each occupied one cloud city. There were few residents in the city, but soon, there would be more and more. Because in Langya Land Spirit's plan, he was going to trigger a war between the 3 continents and pick outstanding Gu masters, moving them to Cloud Cover Continent for nurturing. Fang Yuan flew down to the cloud city and landed. Several hairy man Gu masters quickly welcomed him. They were elite hairy man Gu masters, they were chosen by Langya Land Spirit and sent to Fang Yuan. On one aspect, they were to take care of Fang Yuan's daily affairs, but there was also the intention for them to receive Fang Yuan's guidance in cultivation. Fang Yuan was not concerned about these hairy men. But the leader of the hairy man Gu masters respectfully told Fang Yuan that the 6th city lord has visited Fang Yuan, he had already been in the guest room for a long time already. The 6th city lord was Gu Immortal's 6th hair, he was guarding the 6th cloud city. Why is he here? Fang Yuan felt uncertain, he came to the guest room and met with this Gu Immortal, 6th hair. I am 6th hair, greetings to 2nd city lord. I am here today to seek guidance from you regarding combat. 6th hair paid his respects as he said this. Fang Yuan's expression did not change, but his gaze had turned ice cold. As it turned out, although 6th hair said that out loud, he was secretly transmitting a different message to Fang Yuan. Fang Yuan, I am here representing Lord Xianxia to make a deal with you. Xianxia. Shadow sect. 6th hair was the spy. At once countless thoughts flashed across Fang Yuan's mind like lightning. Too polite, too polite. We are all from the same sect, don't talk about guidance, we can definitely spar. Fang Yuan smiled as he showed a warm expression. He first moved away and invited 6th hair to sit down, before getting to his own seat. These few steps were not far, but countless thoughts flashed in Fang Yuan's mind. 6th hair is the spy, is he the only spy in Langya Blessed Land? He is representing Xianxia to make a deal, what transaction does he want? Over on Xianxia's end, what is going on? He wants a transaction. Is he sincere? Is this a trap? Is this Langya Land Spirit's probing? After all, I joined Langya sect and have an information path alliance agreement on me. Thinking of this, Fang Yuan sat down. His expression changed, his eyes were sharp like daggers, he looked at Sixth Hair with deep killing intent. He transmitted coldly, "Sixth Hair, what guts? Is what you just said true? If it is true, I will hand you over to First Supreme Elder for judgment. If you find any errors, broken links, non-standard content, etc., please let us know. Report chapter so we can fix it as soon as possible." Chapter 1075, Simple Words Can Turn a Snake into a Dragon. Chapter 1075, Simple Words Can Turn a Snake into a Dragon. Translator: Atlas Studios. Editor: Atlas Studios. Sixth Hair looked at Fang Yuan as he laughed, feeling no fear. If he wanted to snitch, Fang Yuan would have attacked the moment Sixth Hair exposed himself. But Fang Yuan did not. He sat down and said some empty threats. As for the reason, Sixth Hair knew clearly. He said, "I was originally in charge of the 12 Cloud Cities. Before you came here, I had already set up an immortal Gu formation. Not only can it conceal us to prevent Xianxia Land Spirit from finding out, it can also suppress the alliance agreement. You can test it out." Fang Yuan had joined Xianxia sect. He was bound by the alliance agreement and could not act freely. Especially when talking with the spy Sixth Hair, it was against the alliance agreement. But hearing Sixth Hair's words, Fang Yuan tested it. As expected, there was no backlash from breaking some small alliance agreement rules. Fang Yuan's gaze was deep. He said after a while, "It seems you are indeed a spy in Xianxia sect. What transaction do you want?" Sixth Hair felt great relief. He was afraid that Fang Yuan would take him down without any further discussion. The first hurdle had been passed already. However, he could not be careless. Fang Yuan was unscrupulous and shameless. He was a devious person with no bottom line. Even though he took a risk and exposed his own identity, danger was still extremely high. There was no choice. Xianxia was out of ideas over there. He could only try this. Having a transaction with Fang Yuan was the same as plotting with a tiger. It was too dangerous. Only after the transaction was over and the evidence was firm, they would be tied together and he would have a hold on him. By then, Sixth Hair would be safe. But how could he achieve his aims without losing too many benefits? Sixth Hair felt troubled. He was on the weaker side now. Xianxia and I have deep enmity. They are suddenly approaching me and even exposed their spy's identity. They have something to ask of me. Interesting. I want to see what he is up to. Fang Yuan had such a thought in his mind. To speak the truth, Lord Xianxia has already reached a desperate situation. His survival is at stake. Otherwise, I would not have appeared to talk to you. Sixth Hair said. Oh. Fang Yuan's brows rose. He looked at the other party again. Sixth Hair was so honest. Fang Yuan felt shocked internally. Why would one expose their own weaknesses before the deal? Fang Yuan's eyes shined. He sensed the ingenuity of Sixth Hair's purposeful reveal. Even if Sixth Hair did not say it, Fang Yuan would have noticed. By saying it, he could show that this was a last-ditch attempt that was filled with determination. It seems that after interacting with Xianxia Land Spirit for a long time, I have let down my guard. Even though the other party is a hairy man, he is a spy from Shadow Sect. How can he be as simple and easy to bully as a land spirit? Fang Yuan raised his alertness. Thinking about it, Fang Yuan spoke slowly and calmly. Xianxia has all of the accumulated Gu worms in my body. He even has the help of Tai by Yunsheng and He Lulan. How can he reach such a stage? I refuse to believe it. Sixth Hair shook his head. Fang Yuan, why the need to probe further? You set up the special will and caused your Gu worms to self-detonate. You really gave Lord Xianxia a huge surprise. He tried to preserve the Gu worms, but only 30% remain. Once he said that, Fang Yuan was fully certain that Sixth Hair was a spy lurking inside Xianxia sect sent by Shadow Sect. Fang Yuan's thoughts churned. His words earlier were not completely true. After Sixth Hair answered him, he obtained a lot of precious information. To think that Xianxia is really controlling He and Bai. He Lulan is a formidable person. She was not easy to control, but after her aunts died, it is much easier to deal with her. She has the great strength true martial physique. If used well, she is an excellent pawn. And Tai Bai Yunsheng is a kind man, even though he is hesitant and timid, he has two-time path Immortal Gu, he can help out a lot. To think that they are both controlled by Wuxia, what a shame. Fang Yuan sighed internally. Fate worked in mysterious ways. After the Battle of Tian Mountain, he and Wuxia had swapped places. He obtained sovereign immortal fetus Gu, while Wuxia obtained his accumulated wealth. He was able to use He Lu Lan and Tai Bai Yunsheng, as a split soul of spectral soul demon venerable, he had incredible methods to keep these two under control. Wuxia has my immortal Gu and He and Bai to help him. Now, he is initiating a transaction with me, I just make him pay a high price. Fang Yuan thought to himself harshly. However, next, after Sixth Hair exposed their weakness, he changed his words, before the deal, let me show you our sincerity. Think of this as free intel. This intel is extremely important, it concerns your future cultivation greatly, or more accurately, it has to do with your life and death. Fang Yuan snorted, he said coldly, you do not need to brag about the value of the intel. I can assess it myself when I see it. Fang Yuan, do you know what Heaven's will is? Sixth Hair asked. Heaven's will? Fang Yuan asked in confusion. Sixth Hair looked at his expression before nodding in understanding, saying, you indeed forgot a lot of things, Fang Yuan. What do you mean? Fang Yuan's brows rose slightly. Sixth Hair said, you had once used Heaven's will's guidance to swap souls with Lord Wuxia, disguised as the pure dream reality seeker physique and finally taking away sovereign immortal fetus Gu. But what you did not know was, this 11th extreme physique was created by old man Xianxia, it had a huge flaw. Any soul which resides in the pure dream reality seeker physique body will fall into deep sleep and lose its memories. Even though old man Xianxia tried to remove the weakness, he only eliminated the weakness of falling asleep, the pure dream reality seeker physique still caused the soul to lose memories continuously. As time passed, more memories would be lost. Precisely because of this, Lord Wuxia was constantly losing memories and could only use the immortal killer move lead soul into dream. Saying this, Sixth Hair took out an information path mortal Gu. He moved this Gu around with his finger as he sighed internally. This Gu worm has little to no value to him. But to Fang Yuan, it was immensely valuable. If not for the situation, why would he pass this to Fang Yuan? In Wuxia's original plan, he was going to use this weakness of Fang Yuan to deal with him. To think that there would be a time where he personally helped Fang Yuan fix this flaw. This letter Gu records the details before and after Tian Mountain, take a look. Sixth Hair said as he tossed the Gu worm to Fang Yuan. Fang Yuan received it and inspected it, there were no problems, he activated the Gu worm and the scenes of Tian Mountain appeared in his mind. He found that he was indeed lacking many crucial memories. No wonder I have been feeling something weird, but I did not know what. I lost my memories. This was true amnesia. By completely losing one's memories, they could not realize it themselves. If they knew that they forgot something, that would not be true amnesia, they could still remember it eventually. However, the scenes in the information path mortal Gu gave Fang Yuan a familiar feeling, of course, there was still a chance that they were deceiving him. After checking it several times, Fang Yuan had a calm expression, his gaze was deep as he said, I seem to have lost my memories, but how can I know that this is real, this can possibly be made up too? Sixth Hair gritted his teeth. He knew that this was the hard part of this transaction. Fang Yuan and Wuxia were enemies, they had deep enmity, there was little trust between them. The problem was how to express his sincerity and make Fang Yuan believe them. If this problem was tackled, the transaction would proceed smoothly. Sixth Hair's thoughts moved rapidly, colliding continuously in his mind. He was considering his words carefully, he had to, because Fang Yuan could kill someone without even blinking. If he said something wrong, so be it if he died, but Wuxia had the mission to save his main body, this could not fail. After a long time, Sixth Hair spoke, Fang Yuan, you possess spring-autumn cicada, you have experienced rebirth, everyone knows this. But the truth is, even if you have many secrets, you have less of a clear understanding than us. Heaven's will is vast, it is everywhere, all over the 5 regions and 9 heavens, it spans across the past, present, and future. The way of heaven is to take away surpluses while replenishing deficits, it emphasizes on balance. And the way of humans is exactly the opposite, it is to reduce the deficits and build up the surpluses. The two are complete opposites, and they are in conflict with each other. Thus, the previous venerables, and any legendary figures, are the targets of heaven's will's suppression. Calamities and tribulations, lifespan Gu, they are 2 of heaven's will's trump cards. Feng Yuan, you have experienced 2 tribulations already, one was the earthly calamity, and the other was the creation of an immortal Gu. The 2 of them had incredible power beyond reason, it was because you had revived using sovereign immortal fetus Gu and your new body in immortal aperture have unlimited potential, once you grow, you will surpass previous venerables. Because of this, heavens will feels extremely wary of you, and wants to kill you before you grow any further. Feng Yuan's heart shook. Since the tribulations, he had been considering this question. And now, Sixth Hair gave him the answer. Heaven's will. Feng Yuan muttered internally, thinking about this phrase. Sixth Hair sighed, he continued, my main body, spectral soul, created shadow sect, zombie alliance, and refined sovereign immortal fetus, preparing for 100,000 years, ending up in failure. This is the work of heaven's will, not only were there grand tribulations and myriad tribulations, we even had to face countless enemies. Heavenly court with heaven overseeing Tower Lord as the leader was its representative. And you, Feng Yuan, were the hidden assassin of our human tribulation. What do you mean? Feng Yuan squinted as his eyes shone, he felt deep interest, he could acutely sense that Sixth Hair's words were going to cause a huge transformation in his situation. Sixth Hair hesitated. He knew, once he said the following words, Feng Yuan's greatest weakness of not knowing heaven's will would be fixed. In fact, it might even cause Feng Yuan's uncontrollable rise to the top. Feng Yuan was like a python stuck in the swamp now. This python's eyes were covered by a black cloth, it did not know its directions, it was rolling around in the mud. But once the information was given to Feng Yuan, the python's cloth would be removed, its vision would return, it would be able to see the huge world and realize that the swamp trapping it was very tiny. With an accurate direction, knowing its circumstances, the python would raise its head towards the sky, it would cause huge storms, it would even become a dragon and roam the world freely. These might just be some words, but to Feng Yuan, they were a qualitative transformation, the value was immeasurable. If you find any errors, broken links, non-standard content, etc., please let us know report chapter so we can fix it as soon as possible. Chapter 1076, Transactions with Shadow Sect, 1/3. Chapter 1076, Transactions with Shadow Sect, 1/3. Translator. Atlas Studios. Editor. Atlas Studios. Sixth Hair did not want to tell this secret to Feng Yuan, but he really had no choice. Xianxia's situation forced him to do this. Breathing in a deep breath, Sixth Hair continued, Feng Yuan, you were able to take sovereign immortal fetus Gu away at the most crucial moment, it was not just because of your own capabilities, but because you received the guidance of heaven's will. Even the fact that you were able to use spring-autumn cicada to rebirth was also part of heaven's will's plot. To let you return to the past and ruin my shadow sect's grand plan. Feng Yuan heard this and his heart shook. The first half was still fine, but the content of the second half. Even with his mental fortitude, he also could not control himself. Boom! Coincidentally, at this time, there was a huge tremor in the outside world. What is going on? In an instant, Feng Yuan regained his cool. He sat up as he used his Gu worms, his eyes pierced the cloud cover, he saw that there was thunder rumbling in the sky, several bolts of lightning were flickering. A thunderstorm was brewing. Sixth Hair laughed coldly, but he felt bleak internally. Feng Yuan, you have just undergone tribulation, there is still much of heaven's will left in Langya blessed land. My earlier words exposed the scheme of heaven's will, I attracted the fury of heaven's will. But all blessed lands and grotto heavens are small worlds independent of the 5 regions, heaven's will cannot control this place. The tribulations are already over, no matter how angry heaven's will is, there is no use. Fang Yuan did not deny it, he looked at Sixth Hair expressionlessly, continue speaking. Sixth Hair was hesitant earlier, but now that he had spoken, he felt relieved on the inside. He spoke even more quickly, continuing, Fang Yuan, your spring-autumn cicada also has heaven's will hidden in it. This has been verified by Lord Ing Wuxia. This is the best evidence proving that every single one of your rebirths were affected by heaven's will. Spring-autumn cicada uses everything in the Gu immortal and only retains a will. This will is carried inside spring-autumn cicada and enters the river of time, traveling upwards to your body in the past, achieving a rebirth. Fang Yuan, you have used it many times, you should know this clearly. Fang Yuan was expressionless, he did not retort. Sixth Hair continued, spring-autumn cicada has heaven's will in it, every time you use spring-autumn cicada, it is the best chance for heaven's will to increase its influence on you. Because at that time, you only have some portion of remaining will left. Without your body, your focus will also be on the river of time, you will not anticipate such a plot working on you. After rebirth, you naturally had to think about how to use your rebirth advantage to cultivate. Precisely so, you were plotted against by heaven's will. The things you experienced before rebirth, the opportunities that you knew, were they really simply what you know now? Those so-called fortuitous encounters were just bait left by heaven's will, so that as a tool of heaven's will, you would grow and reach Tian Mountain, ruining Shadow Sect's plan. According to our deduction, in the future before your first rebirth, Shadow Sect had succeeded. But heaven's will was not willing to see my main body become a venerable again. Why did Bo Qing fail in the past? It was because he was a split soul of my main body. And furthermore, after my main body obtained the sovereign immortal fetus and revived, he would definitely grow beyond all of the other venerables. In the future, heaven's will was no longer able to eliminate my main body. Thus, it thought of a way, creating a plot to send you back in time, using you to change the past and remodel the future. Fang Yuan suddenly asked, wait, I don't understand something, why did heaven's will choose me? Because you are an otherworldly demon, only otherworldly demons can change the past. If they are not an otherworldly demon, even a venerable cannot do enough. Red Lotus Demon Venerable tried all his life, but he only broke Fate Gu, he could not even destroy it, or harm heaven's will. Of course, you are not the only otherworldly demon. But regardless, after taking personal experience and circumstances into account, during that time period, you were the most suitable candidate to be the tool. Sixth Hair answered. Fang Yuan was silent. This was a brand new perspective, a shocking revelation. Sixth Hair's words made Fang Yuan realize that he was immersed in a huge scheme. He thought back over the 500 years of his previous life, he had roamed for hundreds of years, was it the suppression of heaven's will? He had wanted to refine blood deity, did heaven's will obstruct him from doing so? It seemed too easy that he obtained spring-autumn cicada's immortal Gu recipe. After refining spring-autumn cicada, he immediately faced the attack of all the 10 great ancient sects. Sixth Hair looked at his expression and saw that Fang Yuan was moved, but because he did not express himself, Sixth Hair could only curse internally as he asked again. Your spring-autumn cicada is only rank 6, there is a high chance of failure. Why did you succeed every time you used it? That isn't the case, I failed the last time. As Fang Yuan said this, he suddenly was stunned. This point was the strongest evidence proving the presence of heaven's will. His amnesia did not affect this part of his memories, he remembered that he used spring-autumn cicada to rebirth because he was hit by heaven overseeing tower, he could not dodge and had no choice. But before this, the great strength true martial immortal zombie was already vaporized by heaven overseeing tower. According to Sixth Hair's explanation, it could be understood as, the great strength true martial immortal zombie was destroyed, the 10 extreme immortal zombie lifeless formation was incomplete, it could not refine Gu. Shadow Sect's plan failed, the only other way was He Lulan, but she was not at Tian Mountain. Thus, heavens will no longer needed the tool, Fang Yuan, and he failed when using spring-autumn cicada. Instead, Shadow Sect refused to lose, after heavens will abandon Fang Yuan, Shadow Sect used the Red Lotus True Inheritance to help Fang Yuan rebirth and change the past, allowing Shadow Sect's plan to progress. What? You do not know that I failed my last activation? Fang Yuan looked at Sixth Hair. Sixth Hair blinked and felt cold sweat in his hands. He naturally did not know this. He was only a split soul, he did not even join the Battle of Etion Mountain, he had been inside Langya Blessed Land the entire time. Furthermore, he only had Xianxia as a higher-up, a lot of his information came from Xianxia. But he knew that Xianxia had activated Spring-Autumn Cicada. Originally, Xianxia was plotted against by Fang Yuan and had no way out, but because of Spring-Autumn Cicada, there was a reset which caused the current situation. Sixth Hair was thinking about whether he should tell Fang Yuan this secret. He got more and more nervous as he thought over it, he did not know what reaction Fang Yuan would have after he told him. But at this time, Fang Yuan waved his hand, saying, "Never mind, continue." Sixth Hair heaved a sigh of relief, he let out a breath and calmed his emotions, he continued, "Heavens will plan for you to be a tool, it was a brilliant move. We subconsciously assumed that an otherworldly demon would have nothing to do with heaven's will. Because of this, even my main body was deceived. After 3 Kings' blessed land, one of our split souls, old man Xianxia, found out that you had Spring-Autumn Cicada, that you are someone who had been reborn. But because you already went to Hu immortal inheritance, and our 100,000-year plan was right before us, we did not want to create external trouble, so we tried to scheme against you secretly. Thus, old man Xianxia blocked deductions for you, and that caused the central continent Gu immortals, Feng Jiu Ji's group, to go to Luopa Valley. In that battle, even though the blazing glory lightning brilliance immortal zombie escaped, he was captured by old ancestor Xuehu. Heavenly Court and these Gu immortals in northern plains were all secretly influenced by heaven's will, they were part of my main body's, human, tribulation. Fang Yuan, after rebirth, on the way to northern plains from southern border, you encountered a lot of unexpected mishaps, right? These were all caused by heaven's will to eliminate you. Similarly, Lord Xianxia is in a desperate situation now, a part of the reason was that Lord Xianxia had obtained your body, he also attracted a lot of enemies for you, and is facing the problem for you. Fang Yuan, your name is on the Demon Judgment Board, the 10 great ancient sects are after you, even Heavenly Court is pursuing you. Lord Xianxia is the best example of your future. Do you think you can be safe if you hide in the other 4 regions and don't go to Central Continent? My main body defied heaven to refine Gu, but Heavenly Court's Gu immortals could still come after us. The main reason that most Gu immortals don't travel regions is not because of the 5 regional walls, but because of their calamities and tribulations. Once they arrive, the result is hard to predict, if their tribulation was affected, they would suffer. Furthermore, Heavenly Court Gu immortals give their immortal apertures to Heavenly Court, they have no calamities and tribulations, they go outside using a phantom aperture, and they have the method to sleep while preserving their lifespan. Fang Yuan, let me ask this, if I did not inform you today, would you know about heaven's will? The scheme that made you a tool. You and my main body have deep enmity, that is true, but you are also closely linked to us. Lord Xianxia is in grave danger, if he ends up in the hands of Heavenly Court, your relationship with him and your information would all be leaked. Heavenly Court will come after you. Because Heavenly Court are the lackeys that defend heaven's will. Earlier, Feng Jiu Gu and the other Central Continent Gu immortals went to northern plains to investigate, and later, Heaven Overseeing Tower Lord launched an ambush in southern border. Fang Yuan, you and Lord Xianxia are tied together by the same rope, if he dies, you will follow soon enough. Sixth Hair had great eloquence, he spoke without pausing, he listed his reasons with strong evidence, it was truly convincing and understandable. Fang Yuan was so moved he could not help but say, you are right, this is truly the case. I think we can have a good transaction. Sixth Hair was overjoyed, he thought, this matter is settled. At this moment, he was about to tear up. Because recently, he had been under strong pressure. Because of him, Fang Yuan succeeded in the tribulation and refined change form immortal Gu. No matter the reason or motive, the result was clear. He was at fault. He was filled with regret and anguish. Thus, he had to make up for his mistake. Now, he exposed his identity and took a huge risk to urge Fang Yuan, it was Xianxia's idea, but Sixth Hair was also a willing party. It seemed now that everything was worth it. Fang Yuan was Ing Wuxie's only way out. Sixth Hair had helped Ing Wuxie open up this possibility single-handedly. If you find any errors, broken links, non-standard content, etc., please let us know. Report chapter so we can fix it as soon as possible. Chapter 1077, Transactions with Shadow Sect, 2/3. Chapter 1077, Transactions with Shadow Sect, 2/3. Translator. Atlas Studios. Editor. Atlas Studios. Then how do we deal? What do you people need? Fang Yuan asked with an amicable expression. Fang Yuan, we know you have a lot of immortal materials. The immortal materials picked up in Earth Trench have a problem, they are filled with heaven's will. We do not want these. But the huge amount of immortal materials from Falling Heavenly River can be traded. This is our list, take a look. Sixth Hair took out an information path Mortal Gu. Fang Yuan received it and inspected it before his consciousness entered the Gu, he nodded as he browsed. A moment later, Fang Yuan said to Sixth Hair, I have most of these immortal materials, but as a member of Langya sect, can't you get these from Langya sect's inventory? Sixth Hair smiled bitterly, times are different, the new Langya land spirit is not the same as previously, in Langya sect contribution points are everything. If I want to get items from the inventory, I will need to use my sect contribution points. But my sect contribution points have not reached the number that Lord Ing Wuxie needs. You are right. Fang Yuan nodded before asking, I can give you these immortal materials, but how will these immortal materials reach Ing Wuxie? Treasure Yellow Heaven is currently closed. Ing Wuxie had been selling immortal Gu, he made a huge commotion, Fang Yuan knew about it. Sixth Hair continued speaking, it is more troublesome without Treasure Yellow Heaven, but there is a way to send these to Lord Ing Wuxie. Zombie Alliance was a subsidiary of Shadow Sect, before the Battle of Tian Mountain, because old ancestor Shui who had stolen immortal zombie bodies, Zombie Alliance had ordered the branches to create a super Gu formation to connect between the 5 regions. Even if someone attacks a branch, we can transport these immortal zombie bodies to other regions using the super Gu formation. I thought this was just an excuse to plot against the immortal zombies, to think it was real. Fang Yuan was slightly surprised. Sixth Hair smiled bitterly, this is true. Sacrificing Zombie Alliance to refine sovereign immortal fetus Gu was not part of Shadow Sect's original plan. During the Battle of Tian Mountain, we had no choice and did it. There were more benefits in keeping Zombie Alliance, if possible, we would not have sacrificed them. Fang Yuan nodded. He thought about the 500 years of his previous life. During that time, Zombie Alliance was still around in the 5 regions, even until the 5 regions' chaotic war, and just before Fang Yuan's rebirth, it still played a significant role in the affairs of the world. But it was different now. Zombie Alliance in all 5 regions was now an empty shell, most of the immortal zombies were used as immortal materials and were refined in the 10 extreme immortal zombie lifeless formation. Up until this point, the 5 regions were still in a commotion because of it. After all, when Zombie Alliance was around, it controlled many resources. These resources were now ownerless, many Gu immortal experts and super forces were fighting for them, there were bloody scenes. It seems that in the 500 years of my previous life, Shadow Sect indeed succeeded. Zombie Alliance's continued existence proves this point. Heavenly Court attacked Langya Blessed Land, resulting in Feng Jiuji's death inside Langya Blessed Land. This event is very suspicious. Shadow Sect had spies inside Heavenly Court, maybe Spectral Soul had revived and controlled Heavenly Court, turning it into his own force. Fang Yuan thought a little and felt that many things in his memories could have likely had a deeper story behind them. This world's secrets are too deep. Legendary people have appeared continuously. Countless experts contest and plot against each other, they are like the countless stars shining in the sky. Even though I was considered an expert, compared to these people, I am not outstanding. Hee, precisely because of this, it is more interesting, isn't it? Ha ha ha. Fang Yuan thought about this and felt increasingly joyful. On the surface, his lips curled up as he smiled lightly. Sixth Hair could not understand it, he thought, why is he smiling? And why do I have a bad feeling? Fang Yuan breathed in deeply. He looked at Sixth Hair with a shining gaze. His smile became more apparent. Then, what can I get in exchange for my immortal materials? Immortal Gu. Sixth Hair answered, having a calm expression. Interesting, very interesting. Fang Yuan clapped and smiled. What immortal Gu could Ing Wuxie sell? It was obviously Fang Yuan's own immortal Gu. Selling Fang Yuan's immortal Gu back to himself, Ing Wuxie's plan was really amazing. But even Fang Yuan himself felt that Ing Wuxie's idea was quite good. In this world, who would want these immortal Gu more than Fang Yuan? Even if there were such people, they would be few in number. And for other Gu immortals, they were not used to these immortal Gu, they needed to get familiar with them. But Fang Yuan was very familiar with them, he could use them well. These immortal Gu had greater value to Fang Yuan than to others. Furthermore, even if immortal Gu were sold, they needed suitable Gu immortals. For example, a strength path immortal Gu would not be well utilized by Gu immortals of other paths. Because of differences in paths, and conflict in Dao marks, the effect would be reduced, it was not suitable for them. Unless they were using it as a supplementary Gu worm for an immortal killer move, but such situations were rare. One could say, Fang Yuan was the best buyer. Not only did he have use for these immortal Gu, most importantly, he could afford them. As for how to send the immortal Gu, Zombie Alliance's Super Gu formation was likely to be used. Fang Yuan smiled, how many of my immortal Gu are left? Not only do I want to buy them, I also want He Lu Lan's self-strength immortal Gu, and Tai Bai Yun Xing's man as before and landscape as before. I will include these 3 immortal Gu into my request. Sixth Hair considered it for a while before nodding, I can make the decision on this matter and agree to it. Ing Wuxie had control over Tai Bai Yun Xing and He Lu Lan, he could make them hand over their immortal Gu. And the most important thing now was to escape from danger and get away. Other matters could be put aside. Fang Yuan said again, we will trade at the same time, bring your immortal Gu, I will pay the immortal materials. At this time, Sixth Hair showed a difficult expression, as a matter of fact, it will take some time for you to see the immortal Gu. You are aware of the situation in the 5 regions. All the Zombie Alliance branches are being targeted. If Northern Plains Dark Flow Giant City did not sink into Earth Trench, it would have been ransacked already. The Super Gu formation is placed in Dark Flow Giant City, it will take some time for me to get the immortal Gu. But before this, I hope that you can provide some immortal materials first. Because these immortal materials are going to be used for Gu refinement, the faster we refine, the better. Over on Lord Ing Wuxie's end, we do not know how long they can last. Fang Yuan heard this and sneered internally, Sixth Hair is speaking both truth and lies at once. Earlier, he said Ing Wuxie is in grave danger, now he is indicating that Ing Wuxie can last for some time. On the surface, Fang Yuan's expression turned stiff, he rejected, no, impossible. If I pay immortal materials and you do not hand me the immortal Gu, wouldn't I be a fool? Don't worry about this. I have prepared an information path immortal killer move to restrict both sides, none of us can break it. Sixth Hair had a sincere expression. Fang Yuan laughed, he waved his hand, don't talk to me about information path methods, I don't believe it. Since you can subdue He Lu Lan, you must have removed her information path alliance agreement, right? I do not cultivate information path, would I be so foolish as to make an information path agreement with you? This. Sixth Hair hesitated. He understood Fang Yuan's thoughts, if it were him, he would not set an agreement with Shadow Sect either. How about this? Sixth Hair quickly thought of a new idea, I can use information to exchange for a portion of the immortal materials first, how about that? This information and these secrets have immense value to you. Fang Yuan, don't you want to know what the limitations of Heaven's will are? Don't you want our Shadow Sect's precious experience in dealing with Heaven's will? And information about otherworldly demons, even information about Langya Blessed Land, don't you want them? Fang Yuan was deeply enticed. Heaven's will. After understanding that Heaven's will was plotting against him, how could Fang Yuan ignore it? In this world, who else other than Shadow Sect had greater experience in dealing with heaven's will? If not for Shadow Sect taking the initiative to transact, Fang Yuan would still be left in the dark for a long period of time. As for the matter of otherworldly demons, Fang Yuan was very curious. Why did he transmigrate here? Were otherworldly demons were there? Did they come from the same place as him? Why could otherworldly demons change the past? And information about Xianxia Blessed Land. Xianxia Blessed Land had existed for 300,000 years, what secrets were hidden inside? This was extremely important for Fang Yuan, who was getting Xianxia Land Spirit's help, and also his goal of obtaining Xianxia Blessed Land. Undeniably, all this information was extremely valuable, they were very helpful to Fang Yuan. At this moment, the room was silent. Neither side was talking. Fang Yuan was deep in thought. Sixth Hair waited for Fang Yuan to agree, he was very confident that Fang Yuan would definitely say yes. The allure of this information was too high, after all. Of course, if not for this situation, Sixth Hair would not have wanted Fang Yuan to know these secrets. Fang Yuan spoke, but instead asked a question, I don't understand something. Since there is a Super Gu formation, why aren't Wu Xie and the rest using the Super Gu formation to escape directly? Sixth Hair explained honestly, the Super Gu formation can only transport immortal materials. Immortal zombie bodies are considered immortal materials, but they cannot include the immortal aperture. It is too hard to transport Gu immortals across regions. There are some methods, but they are very rare. For example, fixed immortal travel, but immortal Gu are one of a kind. Stargate Gu is an exception, but it is too limited. And not everyone can enter immortal apertures. Shadow Sect knew about Stargate Gu. Fang Yuan had used it many times and even gave the Gu recipe to Xianxia Land Spirit. It was not strange that Shadow Sect knew about it. Be it fixed immortal travel or Stargate Gu, they have requirements towards the Gu immortal being transported. The Gu immortal must have few Dao marks in their body for transportation. Especially Stargate Gu, it was only immortal Gu, even though it used the power of Black Heaven, only rank 6 bottom tier Gu immortals or those who had only gone through a few calamities could use it. Of course, the things inside the Gu immortal's immortal aperture were in another world, they were not considered in this. Thus, back then, Fang Yuan used his dead aperture to contain rank 9 wisdom Gu, he could transport it using Stargate Gu. Using rank 6 bottom tier Gu immortals or immortal zombies as the container to use fixed immortal travel or Stargate Gu for cross-regional transportation. This was very possible. But it could not be used widely. There was only one fixed immortal travel in the world, and Stargate Gu was in the hands of few people. Furthermore, rank 8 Gu immortals and high-rank immortal materials or immortal Gu have too many Dao marks, they are a huge burden to the immortal aperture. Living immortal apertures could burst, while dead immortal apertures would break apart even more quickly, they could not go through this many times. Precisely because of this, Fang Yuan placed the high-rank immortal materials into Hu Immortal Blessed Land or Star Form Blessed Land. These blessed lands that were placed in the outside world were very stable. Rank 8 Gu immortals have their own unique methods to travel across regions. It was through White Heaven and Black Heaven. Earlier, Heaven Overseeing Tower Lord had brought a group of people to southern border and thwarted Shadow Sect's plan, they went there through White Heaven. If you find any errors, broken links, non-standard content, etc., please let us know report chapter so we can fix it as soon as possible. Chapter 1078, Transaction with Shadow Sect, 3/3. Chapter 1078, Transaction with Shadow Sect, 3/3. Translator. Atlas Studios. Editor. Atlas Studios. There had never been good methods to transport Gu immortals across regions. Because Gu immortals had little need for this. When Gu Master undergo immortal ascension, they would become Gu immortals of their respective regions due to the heaven and earth chi. For example, they would be a northern plains Gu immortal, or a central continent Gu immortal. Gu immortals had a territorial mentality, Gu immortals from other regions were usually ostracized. At the end of the Battle of Tian Mountain, He Lulan and Tai Bai Yunsheng were pursued by southern border Gu immortals, this point was showed clearly. In this aspect, Eastern Sea was more open. The territorial mentality was not the key, most importantly, once in a while, Gu immortals had to place their immortal apertures in the outside world to draw in heaven and earth chi and stabilize it. At this time, the heaven and earth chi needed was very specific. If a northern plains Gu immortal placed their immortal aperture in central continent and took in central continent's heaven and earth chi, there would be huge problems. The third reason was calamities and tribulations. Gu immortals faced calamities and tribulations continuously, who would have the time to run around? What was the point of going to other regions? Unless they had important reasons, like clues to a huge inheritance, or maybe for investigation missions like Feng Jiu Gu. There was one thing to note. There was little demand for Gu immortals to travel across regions, but immortal Gu and immortal materials were not the same. They had huge demand for them. And these demands were mostly settled through treasure yellow heaven. Due to all sorts of reasons, few people researched in regional transportation of Gu immortals. In history, there were barely any results. Zombie Alliance's Super Gu formation was merely used to transport immortal materials. Who would waste their time and effort to research on something useless? Gu immortals had huge pressure toward survival. Even though they were immortals, they could not live freely and peacefully. Managing their immortal apertures, raising immortal Gu, and dealing with tribulations, these were enough for all Gu immortals to slog their lives out. Thus, since long ago, cross-regional transportation methods for Gu immortals were very primitive, they were developed slowly. As a result, when the Grand 10 Great Ancient Sects of Central Continent dispatched a team of Gu immortals to go northern plains, they barged through 2 regional walls. In 400 to 500 years, there would no longer be a need to research on this. Because the 5 regional walls would start to disappear, the 5 regions will merge into one. This was something for the future, forget about it for now. In the hall, Fang Yuan let out a hearty laugh. He had probed for so long, he finally had a clear understanding of this transaction. Fang Yuan, why are you laughing? Sixth Hair's ominous feeling was growing. Because I am happy. Even though the Super Gu formation can only transport immortal materials, that is enough. Forget about information and whatnot. My first condition is my original body. Hand it to me. Fang Yuan spoke quickly. Sixth Hair's expression changed. He knew about Wisdom Gu. If Fang Yuan obtained his body, together with his soul, he could use the light of wisdom, and borrow the might of Wisdom Gu once again. What did that imply? He would be like a tiger with wings, he would soar to the sky. In the past, Fang Yuan had a flaw, he did not have lifespan Gu to feed Wisdom Gu. But now, Langya Land's spirit had a good number of lifespan Gu to feed it. Fang Yuan knew about Heaven's will already, if he had Wisdom Gu's help, how could he be stopped? He would be like an eagle in the sky, or a flood dragon roaming the seas. Together with the sovereign immortal aperture. My goodness! Sixth Hair cried out in his thoughts, these few elements alone were shocking, they were unprecedented. If they were combined together, he would gain unimaginable strength. How would anyone else ever compete with him again? That will not work. Sixth Hair shook his head, without a body, how can Lord Wu Xia escape from his predicament? I have bodies. Fang Yuan laughed, I have many strength path immortal zombie bodies. We can trade one for one. You will not suffer a loss for sure, these immortal zombie bodies have more Dao marks than my original body, you are definitely going to profit. Profit my ass. Sixth Hair scolded Fang Yuan's shamelessness internally, his expression became ugly, he snickered at Fang Yuan, let's not beat about the bush, why would I not know your intentions? Oh, so you know about Wisdom Gu. Fang Yuan rubbed his chin. Immortal Gu and information can be sold, but body, no way. Sixth Hair rejected with a firm reply. But Fang Yuan's mood changed even more quickly, then there's nothing to say. Goodbye, see you. Fang Yuan stood up and waved his hand, chasing Sixth Hair away. Sixth Hair was stunned. He was dazed in place, unmoving. Seeing him like this, Fang Yuan snickered internally. With a flourish of his sleeves, he took his leave. Sixth Hair jolted to awareness. He said, "Fang Yuan, wait." "You agreed?" Fang Yuan did not turn around, he only turned his head. "Body cannot be sold, the rest can be negotiated." Sixth Hair insisted. Fang Yuan snorted, walking ahead and through the door, leaving Sixth Hair's vision. Sixth Hair quickly chased him. "We have to be willing parties in a transaction. Fang Yuan, why must you make it difficult for us? If we encounter trouble, you will soon follow." Fang Yuan stopped moving, but he did not turn around even now. He left the back of his head facing Sixth Hair. It was very rude. Sixth Hair heard Fang Yuan's words. "You are right. But so what if I follow? At most, I will die." Sixth Hair walked several steps and chased after Fang Yuan, urging, "Fang Yuan, why the need to say these things? Who would believe such lies? Will you be willing to die? With Shadow Sect around, how many enemies are we drawing away from you? Without us, how long can you last? You think you can deal with heaven's will? Even my main body failed after 100,000 years of planning. With a common enemy ahead of us, why are you like this?" Noisy. A sword wave appeared around Fang Yuan. Rank 7 Immortal Gu Wave Sword. Sixth Hair was forced to retreat. He quickly said, "Careful, be careful. Don't use Immortal Gu, it will ruin my arrangements. If Langya Land Spirit finds out, we will both face the consequences." Fang Yuan snickered. He walked ahead as he said, "The body is my first condition. If this cannot be fulfilled, forget the rest. You have 3 days, go and have a good discussion with your lord in Wuxia." Sixth Hair stomped his feet. 3 days. "Fang Yuan, you know that Lord in Wuxia is facing great danger, we have to fight for time." Fang Yuan walked away as his voice drifted over. "It is great that you realize this. Quickly agree to it. After the deal, you can use the immortal materials to refine Gu, and last an even longer time, right?" Sixth Hair had a ruthless expression. He gritted his teeth as he pointed at Fang Yuan. Killing intent surged. "Fang Yuan, don't go overboard." "So what if I do? I will not be the first to die. I can live well inside Langya blessed land for some time. But you guys? Without Ing Wuxia, Spectral Soul's main body will remain trapped in the giant dream realm. Hehe, the great Spectral Soul Demon Venerable, he is going to die before me. Ha ha ha." Fang Yuan laughed. He walked through the door and vanished from Sixth Hair's vision completely. Sixth Hair stared with bloodshot eyes. Fang Yuan's shameless and thuggish attitude dealt a huge blow to him. In less than half a day, Sixth Hair went to Fang Yuan again. Lord Ing Wuxia agreed. Sixth Hair stared at Fang Yuan. He wanted nothing more than to tear him to shreds. A sharp light flashed across Fang Yuan's eyes. Sixth Hair agreed so quickly. On Ing Wuxia's end, the situation must really be terrible. This was both good and bad. Fang Yuan wanted to gain the most benefits from this trade, but he also wanted Ing Wuxia to draw away the enemies for him. It was most beneficial to Fang Yuan for Heavenly Court and Shadow Sect's remnant forces to fight. "We will trade the immortal zombie bodies first, 1 for 1, before we continue with the others," Fang Yuan said, adding, "If I find out that you tampered with the body, don't blame me for what I will do. You know I am a person who has been reborn, I can use some future methods." "Impossible. We will do the transactions all at once." Sixth Hair was not easy to fool. But Fang Yuan was a tougher nut to crack. A little later, Sixth Hair lost. He raised 3 fingers, gritting his teeth. "Fine, we will first trade the immortal zombie bodies. But there are only 2 deals after that. We will conclude this trade in 3 sessions." 3 days later in Langya blessed land, the two made their transaction. "Okay, next will be Immortal Gu. I want all of my Immortal Gu, along with self-strength, man as before, and landscape as before," Fang Yuan said. Sixth Hair had a curious expression. "So many Immortal Gu, do you have enough immortal materials?" Fang Yuan laughed, "Of course. A few minutes later. This is what you mean by, of course. You casually changed the quantity to be traded by yourself. These immortal materials are not enough to buy even 30% of the immortal Gu. Sixth Hair screamed furiously. We can continue to negotiate the deal. What do you mean by changing it myself? I did not casually do it, I am very sincere. Fang Yuan smiled lightly. Your mother is sincere. Sixth Hair cursed. Fang Yuan's expression stiffened. This means you do not want to deal. Saying this, his sleeves billowed as he turned around. Sixth Hair was beyond furious, threatening to leave. The same trick again. I don't care, I am not the first to die anyway. Fang Yuan shrugged, latching on Sixth Hair's weakness. Sixth Hair's expression froze, he felt like he had fallen into an icy river. He felt really foolish, why did he expose his own weakness? But, with Fang Yuan's shrewdness, even if he said nothing, he would sense it. The second transaction was a long tug-of-war. Fang Yuan's price was way too low, Shadow Sect was not going to take it. In a few days, they went through dozens of difficult negotiations, until both sides came to an agreement. Fang Yuan relented a bit, but he still earned the most from this. Sixth Hair had a downcast expression, his straight back had hunched already. Thankfully, there is only one last deal left. The third transaction. What? We agreed on 3 transactions, why do you want to extend it to 10? Fang Yuan, you shameless bastard, you fiend with no bottom line. Can't you see the big picture at all? Die, let's just all die together. Sixth Hair screamed, his throat went sore, blood was flowing out of his nose due to anger. But Fang Yuan only said one thing, reflecting all of these statements, I am not the first to die anyway. Once Wuxia dies, Spectral Soul's main body is going to follow. After all, the dream realm is huge, the consumption of the soul is extremely rapid as well. Extremely rapid as well. Extremely rapid. Extremely. Fang Yuan's voice was floating around in Sixth Hair's head. Next, he fainted on the spot. If you find any errors, broken links, non-standard content, etc., please let us know. Report chapter so we can fix it as soon as possible. Chapter 1079, Regaining His Body in Spring-Autumn. Chapter 1079, Regaining His Body in Spring-Autumn. Translator. Atlas Studios. Editor. Atlas Studios. A dark and deep pool of soul water undulated with countless ripples. Wuxia opened his eyes wide, the ghost fire in his eyes burning bright as he observed the surface of the soul water. He was viewing a scene that outsiders would not be able to observe. Sixth Hair's figure appeared in the soul water, he was half kneeling on the ground and had an expression of remorse and guilt. Lord, I made a huge mistake. When Fang Yuan was facing the tribulation, if I had not used. I have already said that this matter is not your fault. Speaking of which, it is also because I used my trump card to increase my luck, which allowed Fang Yuan to take advantage of it. Wuxia's voice directly transmitted to Gu Immortal Sixth Hair's mind. This was the method of communication between Sixth Hair and Wuxia. It was a soul path method but with the effect of information path, and was extremely powerful. Both sides were in Central Continent and Northern Plains, separated by 2 regional walls, moreover there was Xianxia blessed land as well. Not only were they able to communicate in real time, they were also able to evade Xianxia land spirit senses. Right now, Wuxia no longer had Fang Yuan's appearance. He had already changed to another strength path immortal zombie's body. But this vessel, because it was too old, its immortal aperture had already broken apart and what Wuxia obtained was only the physical body. Unlike Fang Yuan's zombie body, which had a mortal aperture as well as an immortal aperture. As such, it was very inconvenient for Wuxia to use Gu worms. Whether it be immortal Gu or mortal Gu, they could only live in parts of his body like on his skin, hair, blood, bones, and so on. Not only would this leak their aura and make it easier for enemies to inspect, it was also not safe. When the physical body gets struck by an attack, the Gu worms could also very well meet with a terrible fate. Gu worms were very fragile. Xianxia could be said to have suffered a huge loss from this transaction with Fang Yuan, but his expression was tranquil. He instead encouraged Sixth Hair, "You did this task very well. You constantly expressed weakness to Fang Yuan during the whole transaction process, good job. Especially the fainting at the end, without your efforts, I wouldn't have obtained the immortal materials I needed." Sixth Hair sighed, "I intentionally fainted to probe Fang Yuan, but unfortunately he did not do anything to me. Since he knows our background, he is naturally extremely cautious. Moreover, we have already done transactions multiple times now, both sides have gotten a handle on the other, he has to be wary against us reporting about him to Langya Land Spirit." Xianxia replied. He had been in an absolute plight just now, and had thought about every possible way, before finding there was no way left other than Fang Yuan. Before transacting with Fang Yuan, he had already made sufficient mental preparations. The immortal material list he gave to Fang Yuan had exaggerated contents with huge numbers, hiding the immortal materials he truly wanted within them. In short, he had achieved his goal. He was able to fight for a ray of hope in this desperate situation. As long as he passed this hurdle, his future prospects would be extremely promising. Not mentioning the other immortal Gu, but the main thing is that Fang Yuan not only obtained his physical body, he now has Spring-Autumn Cicada as well. His current foundation is extremely huge. Sixth Hair was still worried. Xianxia snorted, "Even if Fang Yuan gets back his physical body, does he dare to use it? Spring-Autumn Cicada is not a problem, it was already sealed and is going to starve to death soon. Even if Fang Yuan can resolve this problem, Spring-Autumn Cicada itself has a failure rate when activating, it still has Heaven's Will hiding inside it, it will be a long time before he will be able to use it. Moreover, the attention of Heavenly Court's Gu immortals will also be attracted to him." Sixth Hair's expression shook, the visible worry lessening by a lot. He repeatedly nodded his head, "Lord, you are correct." Xianxia heaved a long sigh, "You will still have to continue to watch Fang Yuan. You are already exposed, but Fang Yuan won't make a move against you. It is okay if we are not able to suppress him. He has obtained so many immortal Gu just now, they will certainly be a large burden to him. Moreover, the calamities and tribulations will divert even more of his energy. Let him develop, wait until I gather strength and save our main body, then we shall settle the score with him." One could learn from experience, after having experienced so much, Xianxia was rapidly maturing. He understood what he could give up, and more importantly, learned to patiently endure. He was, after all, one of the split souls of Spectral Soul, and had the natural skill to become a powerful expert. Suffering and setbacks were of value in life, and he was rapidly growing up because of them. Northern Plains, Langya Blessed Land. Some time had already passed since the transactions with Xianxia. Fang Yuan gazed at the immortal zombie body in front of him, and sighed. "I don't dare to use it." Fang Yuan rubbed his chin, feeling troubled. After he had regained his immortal zombie body, although he had used almost all the means available to him at present to conduct many careful inspections, he did not find any issues. But what origin did Xianxia have? What origin did Shadow Sect have? Spectral Soul Demon Venerable. He was the progenitor of Soul Path, a Gu Venerable, a person who had once ruled over the world and all living beings. Would his split soul, Xianxia, have some kind of Soul Path method to create a sinister trap within this body? It was very possible. Fang Yuan's transaction with Xianxia had not been under any information path restriction from the beginning to the end. Because neither side trusted the other. Moreover, Fang Yuan's information path methods were definitely inferior to Xianxia's. If he used an information path method to restrict himself, it was very possible the other party would secretly break it, and this would make it even more unfavorable to Fang Yuan. Thus, he was completely unable to guarantee the safety of this body. Fang Yuan wanted this immortal zombie body back mainly to obtain the acknowledgement of Wisdom Gu and use the light of wisdom. So he needed to put his soul into this immortal zombie vessel. This was very dangerous. Shadow Sect was most proficient in matters regarding the soul. Fang Yuan did not discover any issues, perhaps Wuxie had not tampered with it, but the more likely possibility was that there was a huge issue with this immortal zombie body, only that Fang Yuan did not have the ability to discover it. Spectral Soul Demon Venerable was the founder of Soul Path. Fang Yuan trying to decipher Soul Path methods was like an amateur performing in front of an expert. Looks like I still need to inspect this body for a while. I can't be careless, any slight carelessness and I might fall into a scheme of Shadow Sect. Fang Yuan warned himself. Only when he was 100% sure of safety would Fang Yuan use this body. Or perhaps when there were no other options, he might choose to take the risk. Although I can't use Wisdom Gu, regaining my body in Spring-Autumn Cicada is already a great success. Spring-Autumn Cicada had all along been Fang Yuan's greatest trump card. Now that Fang Yuan had gotten his body back, Spring-Autumn Cicada, which remained in the first aperture as the vital Gu, was naturally also back. In the previous negotiations, when Fang Yuan mentioned for Spring-Autumn Cicada to be returned, he was met with strong denial from Sixth Hair. He refused to admit Wuxie had Spring-Autumn Cicada. Because neither side was restricted by information path methods, Fang Yuan would not be able to tell apart truth or lies. There were no consequences for lying. However, Fang Yuan was even more unreasonable, directly saying, "That is impossible. If you truly did not have, then you people would have refined it. In any case, I don't care about others, but you must return my Spring-Autumn Cicada." Fang Yuan had no bottom line and his stance was extremely resolute. Even though Sixth Hair said that he would swear on his life, shouting loudly as he vowed, Fang Yuan's attitude was unchanged. After wasting a good amount of time, Fang Yuan regained his body in Spring-Autumn Cicada. However, Spring-Autumn Cicada had an issue. It was sealed by Heavenly Court's Gu immortals using some strange methods. It was already cut off from the river of time and was currently in a starving state. Moreover, Fang Yuan also knew Spring-Autumn Cicada had Heaven's will in it. This was his biggest threat. The immortal zombie body in Spring-Autumn Cicada, both had dangers lurking within them and could not be used. But even so, Fang Yuan was happy. Even if I can't use them, as long as they are in my possession, it is a huge victory. Especially when Spring-Autumn Cicada was a huge trump card. After regaining Spring-Autumn Cicada and the immortal zombie body, Fang Yuan demanded fixed immortal travel in the second transaction. But where would Sixth Hair get it from? No matter how forceful Fang Yuan was, it was no use. Moreover, he could also guess fixed immortal travel might truly have been destroyed. If they had fixed immortal travel, they would have already used fixed immortal travel to make an escape. Why would they come to be extorted by him? A more crucial matter was that Fang Yuan and Sixth Hair had already completed a transaction. With the transaction, it meant betraying Xianxia sect. Sixth Hair had a hold over Fang Yuan. Land spirits were single-minded and obstinate. If he discovered this, no matter how Fang Yuan tried to explain, it would probably be of no use. So Fang Yuan finally gave up on fixed immortal travel. Although he could not obtain fixed immortal travel, Fang Yuan obtained a large number of immortal Gu in this transaction. A large number. Among them were He Lu Land Strength Chi Immortal Gu, Self-Strength Immortal Gu and Flying Bear Strength Immortal Gu, as well as Tai Bai Yun Xing's Landscape as before and Man as before. Among Fang Yuan's own, there was Pulling Mountain Immortal Gu, Pulling Water Immortal Gu, Star Eyes Immortal Gu, and Calamity Beckoning Immortal Gu. Iron Crown Eagle Strength Immortal Gu and Connect Luck Immortal Gu had already been placed in Treasure Yellow Heaven by Wuxie, and since Treasure Yellow Heaven was closed, these two Immortal Gu were also trapped within it. Eat Strength, Cleanse Soul, Fixed Immortal Travel, Star Shoot, Star Mark and Starlight had all self-detonated under Fang Yuan's special will, and Wuxie had not been able to save them. Naturally, this information could be false as well. Fang Yuan and Sixth Hair were not bound by information path methods. The bottom lines of both sides had to be probed out by themselves. Maybe Ying Wuxia had secretly withheld some immortal Gu, but Fang Yuan had already done everything he could and had no way to make Ying Wuxia spit them out. After all, every time Fang Yuan transacted, he would be betraying Langya's sect once more, and his tough stance would weaken by some degree. While Shadow's sect had obtained a portion of the immortal materials and their weak stance gradually strengthened by some degree. Of course, Fang Yuan had the firm upper hand from start to finish. After all, Ying Wuxia was the one in a bad situation. But Fang Yuan also did not want Ying Wuxia to die so quickly. If he died, as long as he left behind some clues to Heavenly Court's Gu immortals, Fang Yuan would soon be met with disaster. It was a much better situation with Ying Wuxia attracting the enemies ahead of him. Heavenly Court and Shadow Sect could mutually weaken each other, while Fang Yuan observed from the sidelines. Fang Yuan was aware that since he had stolen Sovereign Immortal Fetus Gu, Shadow Sect would absolutely try to kill him. But this was also a reason for Shadow Sect to secretly protect him. Ma Hongyun's example was right in front of him. Fang Yuan knew he was Ma Hongyun from Shadow Sect's point of view. Shadow Sect definitely wanted to re-refine Sovereign Immortal Fetus Gu. It was just that the situation currently did not permit them to do this. Since Ying Wuxia had looked for Fang Yuan to do transactions, it meant he was truly at a dead end. Fang Yuan had to leave him some hope. If Fang Yuan truly forced him until he gave up and went to drag both of them down, Fang Yuan would also be implicated and might even die. In fact, what Sixth Hair said at the beginning had been effective. If you find any errors, broken links, non-standard content, etc., please let us know report chapter so we can fix it as soon as possible. Chapter 1080, Flying Bear Transformation. Chapter 1080, Flying Bear Transformation. Translator. Atlas Studios. Editor. Atlas Studios. Several days later, Langya Blessed Land. Two figures were cutting through the air, before they suddenly stopped. This land is a desolate area, it is suitable for our spar. The figure ahead observed the surroundings, and spoke leisurely. Brother Fang is right. The figure behind was a hairy man Gu immortal named 12th Hair. He spoke brightly and with a grin on his face. Compared to the other hairy man Gu immortals in Langya sect, 12th Hair was somewhat special. Because he not only cultivated refinement path, but also cultivated enslavement path. He was a dual cultivator of refinement and enslavement path. It was not an easy thing for Gu immortals to cultivate two paths, because almost all Gu immortals only had one immortal aperture. When they underwent immortal ascension, the Gu worm they used for breaking open their aperture into an immortal aperture would be what decided their main cultivation path. The Dao marks added on from passing tribulations would mostly be of their main path as well. However, in this world, there were many Gu immortals that cultivated two paths as well. They were mostly rank 6 and rank 7. Cultivating one path primarily, while cultivating another path as a secondary path. Such Gu immortals often had fortuitous encounters, obtaining immortal Gu that were suitable for cultivating two paths. For instance, Fang Yuan's Eat Strength immortal Gu could increase his strength path Dao marks. If Gu immortals of other paths obtained it, they could also dual cultivate strength path. 12th Hair was not an exception. In his early years, because of an unexpected surprise when refining Gu, he obtained a completely new Gu embryo from the failed refinement. After his immortal ascension, he raised this Gu to rank 6 and named it Immortal Slave. This Gu could add enslavement path Dao marks to his body. This made him rather special among all the hairy man Gu immortals. The previous Langya land spirit had taken great care of him. Although enslavement path did not have much of a relation to refinement path, Langya land spirit encouraged 12th Hair to continue cultivating both paths, because the enslavement path Dao marks in 12th Hair could provide huge help when refining enslavement path immortal Gu. The current Langya land spirit regarded 12th Hair with even more respect. But what he prioritized was the aspect of battle strength. 12th Hair cultivated enslavement path. This was an excellent foundation. Langya land spirit even gave beast enslavement immortal Gu to him, intending to nurture him as their enslavement path battle strength. Every emperor had his own favorites, but 12th Hair was even more well-liked and was the favorite of the current Xianxia land spirit. Fang Yuan had not been very sure on the details about these hairy men. But in the secret transactions within Wuxia, he obtained much intel about Xianxia blessed land. The intel could not be said to be very precious, but they were of extremely huge help to Fang Yuan, letting him have a comprehensive understanding of Xianxia sect. Fang Yuan and 12th Hair both descended to the ground. Cloud Cover Continent's ground was made from cloud soil, it was white and slightly soft. It was very different from the sensation of an ordinary muddy surface. 12th brother, please. Fang Yuan gestured with his hand. Huh, brother Fang, I won't stand on ceremony then. Chestnut Yak, come out. 12th Hair laughed loudly, he somersaulted and while landing on the ground, he hit the ground with his palms. He looked like he was horsing around, before suddenly performed a kneeling ceremony towards Fang Yuan. Gu immortals paid attention to their bearing, this kind of humiliating action was absolutely avoided by human Gu immortals. But these hairy man Gu immortals were different, they had gone through the previous Xianxia land spirits nurturing, each of them were very straightforward with very shallow battle strength. Over these last days, Fang Yuan was already used to the unusual. 12th Hair knelt towards Fang Yuan, his excited expression suddenly stiffened. Ah! He raised his head, looking at Fang Yuan, how embarrassing, I failed. No problem. Fang Yuan warmly smiled, it is an immortal killer move, failure in activation is an unavoidable matter, try again. Yes, yes. 12th Hair repeatedly nodded his head, somersaulting once again towards the back and with a slam, his knees and hands touched the ground simultaneously. Silence. After being at a standstill for several breaths of time, 12th Hair stuck his tongue out, licking his lips, damn, I failed again. Let me try again. Swoosh. A somersault. Slam. Kneeling towards Fang Yuan. Another few seconds of standstill, but there was still silence. Let me try again. I don't believe it. 12th Hair shouted in determination. Swoosh. A somersault. Slam. Kneeling towards Fang Yuan. Another few seconds of standstill, but there was still silence. I'm sorry, wait a while. 12th Hair said to Fang Yuan. Fang Yuan warmly smiled, it is understandable, understandable. 12th Hair gratefully nodded his head as he made an attempt again. Swoosh. A somersault. Slam. Kneeling towards Fang Yuan. Another few seconds of standstill, but there was still silence. This continued for a dozen or so times without any success. Fang Yuan had not even made any move, but 12th Hair had already spurted out several mouthfuls of blood, moreover blood was seeping out of his ears as well, his face getting paler and paler. Failure in activating an immortal killer move would cause backlash to the Gu immortal. Even Fang Yuan also could not bear to see this continue, and could not resist reminding, from my observation, 12th brother, your somersaulting has almost no use towards the immortal killer move, might as well try discarding it. Somersaulting? 12th Hair scratched his head and said, innocently, this is my meticulously designed movement. Don't you feel somersaulting will make me look imposing and cool? Fang Yuan's face almost was distorted to the point of lines appearing, as he thought, your movement of kneeling towards your enemy is indeed imposing. But 12th Hair was also an obedient person who knew to correct his mistake, since brother Fang thinks it is inappropriate, then I will change it. After that, 12th Hair no longer somersaulted. Instead, slam, he directly knelt towards Fang Yuan. It was a standstill, several breaths later, he stood up, puffing out a mouthful of blood, refusing to give in, he said, let me try again. Several tries later, an azure blue radiance suddenly blossomed from 12th Hair's hands. The radiance quickly enlarged, and actually formed a blue lake on the ground. The lake water surged and a cattle-shaped desolate beast rode the giant wave, charging towards Fang Yuan. Rumble. The blue lake water washed to the shore, the giant yak stepped on the ground and grunted towards the sky. Whoosh! A formless sound wave squeezed out the air and actually stirred up a vortex. This giant yak was bluish-black with a large head and thick lips. A pair of bull horns spaced quite far apart pierced towards the sky. It had a wide chest and a large stomach, but it gradually became slim towards the rear. The whole body looked huge at the front and small at the back. The lower side of its body and its 4 legs were covered with thick hair that were drooping down to the ground. Its tail was thick and large like a brown broom. There was no doubt of the might of this giant yak, and it also had a superb debut, brimming with a tyrannical aura, forming a completely stark comparison with 12th Hair's performance. However, Fang Yuan did not care. Chestnut yak, this giant yak might be a desolate beast, but it was well known for its low battle strength. The impressions of many Gu immortals towards it were of the unique flavor of its meat. It could be eaten raw and tasted like chestnuts. This was the reason for its name. But the chestnut yak's battle strength was naturally not the weakest among desolate beasts. The publicly recognized weakest desolate beast were desolate beast dragonfish, which Fang Yuan was breeding. It finally activated. 12th Hair was jubilant, and shouted as he pointed at Fang Yuan, "Chestnut yak, charge!" Snort! The chestnut yak grunted towards the sky once again, but did not move. 12th Hair's face flushed with embarrassment, and seeming holding back his anger, he commanded again, "Charge, charge, charge, you foolish yak." The chestnut yak only then started to rush forward. It was already at a very short distance away from Fang Yuan, and reached Fang Yuan within a few steps. Strong winds surged forward. The chestnut yak was enormous, and as it rushed, it was like 4 carriages stacked together. It had quite an imposing aura. Fang Yuan chuckled. Inside his immortal aperture, change-form immortal Gu flew up. Following it, all kinds of supplementary mortal Gu flew up and revolved around change-form immortal Gu. Transformation path immortal killer move, flying bear transformation. Bright radiance suddenly erupted. An intense light forced 12th Hair to close his eyes. 12th Hair quickly activated his investigative Gu, a layer of transparent crystal covered his eyes and he was able to open his eyes again. The light had yet to dissipate, but 12th Hair was able to see the scene clearly. Bam! The chestnut yak seemed to have collided into a giant beast. This giant beast was even larger than it. The chestnut yak's collision showed no results. At this time, the light dissipated, and revealed the true appearance of the giant beast. This was a giant white bear. Its physique was burly and bulky, and its body was covered in short and densely packed white fur. It had sharp claws, and its short tail was curled up like a white pom-pom, appearing somewhat cute. This was a transformation of Fang Yuan, into a desolate beast flying bear. When the chestnut yak saw this flying bear, its eyes immediately popped open as its imposing aura vanished like a flickering candle. It gave a miserable cry before actually turning around and running away. 12th Hair yelled furiously at this, "You cowardly yak, you are also a desolate beast, damn it, go back." He activated his enslavement path method and was only able to regain his control over the chestnut yak after it had ran a large distance. The yak once again charged towards the flying bear. The chestnut yak was herbivorous and had a docile nature. This chestnut yak had been raised by the previous Xianxia land spirit in order to use its meat as Gu refinement immortal material. Because of Shadow Sect's sudden attack, Xianxia blessed land's other desolate beasts all died. So 12th Hair could only use this chestnut yak to practice his skills. Fang Yuan quietly stood on the spot, and only when the yak had reached in front of him, did he exert strength in his limbs and erupt. Whoosh! The flying bear's enormous physique did not implicate its speed in the least, as it easily dodged to the side. The chestnut yak brushed past the flying bear. The flying bear roared and suddenly turned around, leaping towards the sky. As it descended, the flying bear stretched out its right paw and slammed at the back of the chestnut yak. Bam! There was a strong collision. White cloud soil flew all around. The chestnut yak was heavily injured and was actually slammed to the ground by one smack from the flying bear. A huge crater formed on the level ground. The chestnut yak was defeated in the blink of an eye, lying on the crater without moving. Its eyes revealed its terror and its whole body was trembling. If you find any errors, broken links, non-standard content, etc., please let us know. Report chapter so we can fix it as soon as possible.